Crystal Palace versus Manchester United preview. What's up, everybody? How you doing? Hope everybody is doing well. We're going to be talking about the match coming up tomorrow. I'm going to break it down, do some analysis, discuss the match, and do some of the current transfer updates as well. So smash the like button, get involved in the chat, subscribe if you're new to the channel. We are trying to get to 3,500 subscribers. We're at 3,240. Hope everybody is doing well. Let's just get straight into the match at hand. Obviously, listen, this match out of the, lineup of 5 to 6 matches that we have to play in the next few weeks, this was always going to probably be the toughest one that we have. It's away from home. Crystal Palace, very good form, good team as well. And, it obviously doesn't help coming off the bat of losing to Everton in the way we did at home. That was one that we expected to get 3 points. We should have got 3 points. And now, because we did what we did, we have further repercussions that we may have to suffer. Because I'm going to be quite honest, right off the bat, right out the gate, I don't feel good about this match at all. And usually I'm pretty positive. I try to, see the glass, half full instead of half empty, but I don't feel particularly good about this match. There's a lot of things about this match. Our recent record against Crystal Palace, their form versus our form, and we have many worries in our squad. So I don't really feel confident in this match. I don't really see how we get a win. And to be honest, we need a win. A draw is not good enough. Because of last week. And, we'll talk about the upcoming fixtures after this match. But, just for like some context real quick before we break it down and dive deeper, Crystal Palace is in 5th. They might have changed because of the fixtures, but they were in 5th, 20 points from 12 games. They had 5 wins, 5 draws, 2 losses, and a +7 goal difference. And United, 10th place, 18 points from 12 games, 5 wins, 3 draws and 4 losses, and a 0 goal difference. Palace are 2 points ahead of us, which isn't a bit massive gap, but this is sort of a 6-pointer now because of that. And it was always going to be a 6-pointer, but if we won the match, we would have been ahead of them, and we would have been in a better position to go into this match. A Palace win will keep them in the top 4 race, and a United win pulls them level or above, depending on some of the other results. And our recent league games, we're trending down and they're trending up, unfortunately. We were on a 5-match unbeaten run, as everybody knows. But our last 3 matches is 2 draws and a loss. And, our last 5 was win, draw, loss. And for Crystal Palace, they were loss, draw, loss, win, draw, win. So the last 3 matches, they're in a better form than we are, and they're trending up and we're trending down. And they're our last match was an at-home defeat to a 10-man Everton, which was disgraceful. We just watched right now Everton get absolutely battered at home by Newcastle. And it made that loss even worse because, Newcastle haven't been performing particularly well in the table. Just about as good as we have been, very inconsistent. They've gone to Everton and they've absolutely smashed them. And we were at home and we couldn't score a goal and we couldn't get 3 points, at home. And Newcastle is doing it away from home. So that just makes it even worse, in terms of that context. And, just listen, Palace's last league game, they won 2-0 at home versus Wolves. It's Wolves, so, kind of an easy day there. But, listen, they lost 2-1 away to Strasbourg in Europe on Thursday. Hopefully they're a bit hungover from that. It is a short turnaround for them, in terms of that, but that's what happens. We've been there before. We played Europa League. We know what it's like to play Thursday, Sunday. So hopefully that plays into a little bit of our favor. But, home and away form and other stuff. Palace are unbeaten in their last 12 Premier League home games. They have 6 wins, 6 draws. So their home form and their home record is very good, which is very bad for us because we're struggling. Now we're on the downtrend, but we are really, really bad away. Yes. And shout out to the chat. I'm sorry, I didn't have the chat pulled up, so I hope everybody's doing well. I'll get to you guys in a second. But Palace's last, Palace unbeaten in their last 12 Premier League home games, 6 wins, 6 draws. Palace are unbeaten in their last 4 league games versus United, winning 3 and drawing 1. United have failed to score in all 4 of those games. United have only 1 win in their last 11 Premier League away games. And this is where the big issue, the big problem is, because we clearly, obviously, I mean, you don't even have to look at the record. But when you do look at the record, 1 win in the last 11 Premier League away games is diabolical and horrible. And we cannot survive a Premier League season with that, because we can't even rely on home, apparently, which is, we need it. But at this moment in time, the way we are, we can't even rely on home. So that away record needs fixing. That away record needs to be better. 1 in 11 is absolutely dreadful. And Palace have a very good home record. So this is why I'm worried. This is why I don't feel confident about this match. Listen, we absolutely need a response. But the thing is, I don't know where it comes from. I don't see how we get it. Now, you could try and look at the glass maybe half full, luck, whatever you want to call it. But United seem to do things when we think there's just no chance. They somehow seem to get a result. And when we say we're favorites and we expect us to go and do a job and, get over the line, we seem to falter. So maybe that aspect comes into play. But I mean, that's a lot of wishful thinking and hopefulness, but let me get to the chat. United Keys started off by saying, was always going to be the toughest match in this fixture run. The loss to Everton at home made it 10 times tougher and worse. We struggle massively away from home as it is. Need a response by how? I mean, he's basically, I mean, he said this before I even went live, so, or they, because I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but yeah, I mean, spot on, like exactly what I was just talking about in the opening sort of monologue of the show. Like, it's always going to be the toughest match. It's away from home. They're a good team. They're a very balanced team, and they're comfortable in playing the 3 at the back formation, and we clearly are not, and we struggle away from home, and we need a response. But how? Where? I just don't see it. Lyle's here, says, hey, Eric and all you Reds. Steph's here as well, says, big up, Eric. How you doing, Steph? How you doing, Lyle? Steph says, United players need to repair some damage tomorrow, but I fear the worst. We must score first and show some fight. Well, it would be nice if we could score first, Steph. I think, listen, if we can manage to score first, it's going to put a lot of points in the bank for us in terms of, giving us a bit of an edge. And a bit of a cushion, but still, I think even if we score first, we've seen us collapse in the last 3 matches. We've seen us collapse, and I still think that element's going to be in there. I worry very, very much about that aspect in terms of, even if we manage to score first away from home, you just have the feeling of there's going to be some sort of a collapse. We're going to concede. We're going to struggle in probably good periods of the match. So we're going to need to step up to a level of expectations that I think many of us don't believe that we can actually probably are going to hit in this match. And the players, this match has become so much larger than it probably already was. And the players really, really need to pull something off that I don't think, and I'm sorry to be like negative, and I'm sorry to be sort of the bearer of bad news, because you guys all know that I try to be positive, but I just really don't have a good feeling about this match. Because of what they showed us coming off the back end of last match, and again, I said, like, we expect us at the very minimum, we were quite hopeful for the home form, the home matches. We tend to perform well. We didn't. And, the away matches is still going to be a problem, and I don't know when we fix it, but I don't really feel like this is the match where we're going to figure out how to fix it. So Steph says Selhurst Park is a difficult place to go, and that's just another thing. Like, right off, just in regular standards, it's already a difficult place to go to. Mix in the rest of the circumstances that's going around, with our team, our squad, how we performed last match, and it starts to get a lot more gloomy and a lot more dark, and a lot less, hope that we're actually going to go do something. Lawrence Burry says it's so tragic, peeps, when Newcastle put 4 past Everton in Liverpool. Yeah, and this is another thing, like that result, and I was just watching the match. But listen, the match is over, so I thought might as well go live at this time. It just puts it into worse terms for us. To watch that, to see Newcastle away from home go to an Everton team that is at home and get absolutely slapped up at their own home, and we couldn't score a goal. At our home against the 10-man Everton. It makes that match feel, it already felt just unbearable, but now it just makes it feel even worse that we did that. Sanchi says, we lose tomorrow, we end up in 14th, 15th. You back on Amorim? Listen, I am going to continue to give the manager the opportunities to prove that he can get this team somewhere. And, I guess I sort of stand in the boat of I will probably go down with the ship in terms of once it's really, really bad and the math starts not mathing up and the gap starts getting big, then, the writing will be on the wall by that time and everybody will have their answer. But listen, we've talked a lot about tests over the last few weeks. This is another test away from home. We need a bounce back. We need a response. Again, listen, a draw is not really good enough, but I do really feel like we have a large chance of getting beat. So if we can, off of what we've done last week and sort of this, we've drawn 2 matches, we've collapsed in those 2 matches, and then we managed to lose in an unthinkable way against Everton at home. If we can manage to get a draw against Palace and then go on to win the next 2 matches after that, I don't think it's the most terrible result. It has to do with the context that goes around it. But obviously, I would like my team to win. I want 3 points. But I understand the difficulty of this. So Grace is here. Says, what's up, peeps? How you doing, Grace? Hope everybody's doing well. Lawrence says no leadership on the pitch. Shocking on Monday. Yeah, and, Lawrence, this is one of these things that we have been suffering for quite a bit. It's not just sort of been under Ruben Amorim, and I say these things because it's not to protect Ruben. It's to provide a wider context of, I don't like when we get so narrow-minded on just the manager. Does the manager have his faults? Does the manager make mistakes? Of course he does. And is he at blame for things that go on? Of course. But I always feel like at some point, no matter what manager we've had, it gets very tunnel-visioned onto him. And, if you look at the wider context, in my opinion, for United, how long have we been talking about no leadership on the pitch? It's been through 3 or 4 managers. This is a club problem. This isn't a specifically problem created by the manager. This isn't something that's new just because this guy is in charge. We have been, we've had this issue for so long and we haven't found the answer to it at this, up to this date. And, will we find the solution on the Ruben? Is Ruben still going to be here? These are things that I'm talking about now. Clearly, obviously, Ruben hasn't found that answer yet. But I don't think specifically a manager will walk in and sort of find that answer in terms of making these lot, the majority of them, turning them into leaders. I don't know if you can do that. I'm sure there's people that can argue that you can. Last time we talked about, we feel like, he should be getting a little bit, maybe more of a tune out of some of these players, especially. And maybe that's true, but I also think that there is probably a good aspect of that. We need to continue to change the team, build on the team, and that means getting rid of players and bringing in new players with better mentalities, better attitudes, and stuff like that, and just really changing the dynamic of the team. So we probably need it on two fronts. We probably need it to come from the manager aspect, but we also need to do it in terms of squad building and stuff like that, which obviously at this moment in time we can't buy players. So Ruben's going to have to try and unlock something that hasn't really been there or has been locked. Grace asks who likes butter. I like butter. Grace says, give us Tonali and Bruno G and put them in our midfield. We would be so much better. And this is one of those things that I totally agree, Grace, because it's not even the specifics. I wouldn't even go as far in to say, I think you could say Tonali, Bruno G. I think you could say, you could get probably a couple different pairings and put them in. But I like to go to the wider view. And it's just that the wider view is just that we clearly need better personnel, in different aspects, specifically the midfield, of course. And we need a better midfield pairing. And we need people that can do, the proper job there. And this, just piggybacks on the back of what I was just saying. Like, we do need to upgrade personnel. We have to continue, but that aspect is going to either struggle or it's going to be easier for us based on what we do in the current season that we are. And that's why we do need to have a good season of some sorts, because it'll make it easier. It'll make the club more attractive. There'll be more belief in Ineos and the project, and there is improvements here and there is something to buy into, and we might be able to get other players. There's been a story coming out about Elliot Anderson the other day, which obviously many people at Manchester United want him, and Liverpool and City are involved in this, and it makes it much tougher for us to do it if we don't end up in a good position, and we can stand a chance to lose a player like that. And this is why there are a lot of repercussions to come out of United not performing well. It kind of hits the tone and the ring of the repercussions of last season where we didn't win the Europa League. And we're gonna have to deal with that, and it's gonna set us back to a certain extent. So this is why I'm hoping we can figure something out and get some sort of answers for the season and sort ourselves out, because we need it. It's not really necessarily about the manager. It's about the future of the club. It's about trying to make progress, and I want us to make progress, and I want us to be better, but we have to get results. We have to get answers. We have to solve problems along the way. And right now, we still are in a sort of a spot where we still have a chance, even though, we might not be looking too good points-wise and mathematically-wise. We still have a chance to turn things around. Where I don't want to get to is a place where I spoke about before, where it's pretty much just done and dusted. Grace says, I know fans say we have 7 defenders, but playing a back five is naturally more defensive with the extra center back. I didn't hear Chelsea complain when they played a 3-4-3 with 7 defenders. You said this last time, and I bring up the point, Grace. Again, I think that if we manage to win more matches more consistently, and we weren't so inconsistent, and we don't do things like we turn up against at Everton at home with 10 men up and lose the match. And let's say we had a slightly better away record. Let's say we had 4 wins out of our last 11 Premier League away matches. I think that talk goes away, because when you win matches, I don't think people will complain. When your team is better and sort of at the top and more consistent, I don't think people will complain about the formation, the tactics, having 5 at the back. Some people will, because they don't prefer it or they don't think it's right, but it definitely spreads and becomes a bigger narrative when the team isn't performing well and the team's not getting wins. And now, if you look at our situation, the team is struggling to score goals. and we struggled to score at Everton. So I do think, like, you know, if you put it into a bit of perspective of, like, just think, you know, for argument's sake, if United was in third and we're performing pretty well and we're performing pretty consistent, and we're putting in strong performances, I don't think you will hear people complaining about extra centre backs and wing backs and 5 at the back. But when the team isn't winning and the team is inconsistent, and sometimes we're going to matches and we struggle to put the ball into the back of the net, then these conversations are going to be, you know, much more higher. So Lawrenceburg says, I can be philosophical because extra international breaks and injuries have ruined momentum in a special World Cup year. Still, most hoping for a draw tomorrow, then we can regroup with players back. Yeah, I mean, listen, just on a quick update, obviously, you know, we've received news that Cunha, unfortunately, is not going to be part of the match tomorrow. So, I mean, that's a huge loss, again, in my opinion. You know, I hit on this last time and I talked about, look, we lose Šeško, we lose Cunha out of the front 3. They were 2 out of the 4 signings that we made this summer. They've been major, you know, signings for us. And, you know, they're sort of the difference in the attack. And, you know, look at what we did last match without them. So I do have 2 lineups that I'm going to discuss and show and talk about in a couple minutes. But, you know, Cunha not being there again, listen, people, I think, you know, haters, rivals will say, you know, Cunha hasn't really made an impact in terms of goals or assists. That's fine. But I think just off of the plain simple fact, I mean, we're talking about no leaders on the pitch. We're talking about no leadership. We're talking about sort of a flat mentality. And I think he brings those things. And the times he hasn't been in the squad for us this season so far, and it's been a couple times, we don't feel the same. We don't look the same. And we don't play the same. So to that aspect, forget the goals and assists, the mentality and the attitude and sort of that firiness that he brings to the squad, we miss that deeply. And our squad is still in a bad position, because to lose one player like that and then we sort of collapse out of it is that's not a real team, you know? So again, we're still in a situation in my eyes where we lose a player or 2 and we turn into this other team that nobody likes, and can't perform and can't do the job. So Grace says, people complain this is not the United way, but we haven't had a real creative wingers since the Sir Alex Ferguson days. And again, Grace, I agree. And, you know, I kind of said this last time, you know, what is sort of I think we have the idea and we know what the United way is supposed to be. But I think the bigger argument that I bring up is, I don't think you can take the old United way and make it work in terms of copy and paste it into today. I think it would clearly have to have modern updates. And in terms of United way, I think it's very difficult to find and implement, because what has been the United way over 12 years? And I don't overlook this aspect at all. You're talking about 12 years. 12 years is a very long time to be lost. 12 years is a very long time to travel in a direction from where you once were to where you are now. So to try and sort of find the United way, or bring back this sort of aspect that we used to play. This is why I make these arguments. 1, football has moved on from there. And 2, we have seriously lost our way. So to find that answer, to even get close to that, it's going to take a few years to do that. I don't think anybody, and I will continue to say this because I truly believe it, I don't think anybody out there in the footballing world, and in terms of a manager, will walk into this football club and find those answers in 1 to 2 seasons. Because I think whoever it is, the project clearly needs 3 to 4 years. Now, along that route, we have to make progress. We need to look better and we need to be building on things. But I think to fully unlock that, to fully develop something that we can probably say is close to the United way, and something that we like, and something that, you know, brings respect, and that people like actually feel strongly about and buy into, I think it's going to take a few years to do that, because we have to undo sort of what we've done recently. So, Lauren says, so would you opt for wide attacking prowess under Semenyo or midfield backup in ideal January window? I mean, it's a good question. Listen, I think it's a difficult situation to kind of discuss, or sort of, because again, I think we would all love midfield reinforcements. I think we all say and all probably agree that we need it, and we know we need it. The difficult thing is, if the targets that we deem as our best targets aren't available, and January is always very tricky, how do we navigate that? What do you do? What is the right call? Do you go and sign somebody like, the midfielder from Wolves? His name is slipping my mind. Do you go and sign somebody for like the player from Wolves, who is clearly not in a top 5 target list, because we know the top targets, and he's not one. He's new, and it's not to say he's bad, but it's just he's not A, B, and C. He's lower on the list. Do you go and get him because we need him, and if you can do that deal, or is it like what I said last time, where maybe you do what's in front of you and what's available to you, and if it seems like Semenyo is one that could technically be easier, he would add, an aspect to the squad. We could use him in a different sense. It's not going to be a midfield answer, like central midfield answer, but, he has a buyout clause. I believe we have the money to do this, because I think if our midfield targets were available and we could actually do a deal, and like they would be willing to move and the clubs would be willing to do a deal, I think we would be in to buy them. Now, Grace says, she doesn't believe that we will sign anyone, and says that she thinks Baleba and a wingback will sign in the summer. Well, I will say this again, and I've been saying this. United can't do nothing in January. We can't afford to do it. The club can't afford to do it. They can't afford to do it to Ruben. In my opinion, listen, I understand that the January is difficult, but United can't do what United done in the past, where they say the January market isn't a good place to do business, while we watch all the other teams that are already, some are better than us and some are on the same level as us, go into the market and bring people in, and help them with the rest of the season. We cannot afford. So the club has to do something, and I'm looking for them to have a plan and for them to figure it out, because I understand it's difficult. I understand some of our targets might not be available. I understand that you might not be able to do certain business, but I will not take no business as an answer. We cannot. They will be no better than the Glazers. They will be no better than Ed Woodward. They will be no better than Richard Arnold. Okay? And we're supposed to have a better structure. They're supposed to be the better hierarchy, and they might not be successful at the end of the day, when we come to the end of the story or whatever it is, but they're supposed to be better. And to do better, you need to do business in January, like every other proper and serious football club. And if they don't do it, I will be the first one to call them out for it, because I think we seen when Ruben came in November last year, and when we got to January, we needed more help. We only got Dorgu in. It didn't really help, because we needed more help. And I think now in this same situation, we still need help. Ruben needs help, but the team needs help. The club needs help. The club needs, us to do something about it. In terms of, we need to go out and do business. So I think major big signings are obviously going to be for the summer. I think players like Wharton and Baleba and Elliot Anderson, those players will be for the summer. But listen, if we could do a midfielder loan, even a loan that is of decent quality, and get them in, that will help. And that, I hope, will be good enough, but it's better than literally nothing. And if we can go and get a player in maybe another position, maybe a Semenyo, maybe a wing back or something like that. I don't know what's necessarily going to be available by the time we get to January. You know, maybe some things pop up on the radar that aren't there. Maybe they're looking at some things that we're not privy to yet. So we'll see. But yeah, there's absolutely no way that United don't, they can't do it. For me, if Ineos doesn't do business in January, they've basically written off the season, and it'll be another one that they've written off. And I think I think they've let Ruben set out to sail on a raft, and he's eventually going to drown because a storm, and Ruben's talked about storms, but a big storm will hit again, and that raft will not survive. So, and listen, if they end up sacking him, later on down the line, maybe he finishes out the season and they move on from him. They will have to share the responsibility in that. I don't believe that they did the best that they could do in terms of they have an opportunity in January. And they don't take it. So they need to figure something out. Sanchi says Amorim has just 6 years of experience, so he is a really young manager. If United could give him a chance, why can't he give a chance to young players? Well, Sanchi, I mean, it's a good sort of point, and I get this. And, I was just talking to my father the other day, and, we get into a big argument over this because my father is one that he really wants the youth to be given an opportunity. He's sort of tired of seeing these experienced players letting us down and not performing. And, he doesn't like sort of the direction that the club is going in with the youth. And I understand his points, and, he makes valid points. It's not like he's talking nonsense or anything. We just have opposing views in that. I sort of look at it in a long-term sort of sense. And I've always said this. You guys know this. The ones that have always been here, I've always said this. I've always said that for me, the way I view it, and maybe I'm wrong, but the way I view it is I look at these players, they're experienced, and they can't handle the pressure. They can't get over the line. They can't do us a job. I view some of the young prospects that we have, I don't feel like they're necessarily ready. And I know with young players, listen, they might come in, they might impress, but they're young players, and there's always inconsistency in young players. They will hit bad form. They will, be inconsistent. There's no way they're going to be able to really, unless you have sort of a unicorn in there, they're not going to be able to sort of carry us for the season. And I don't actually believe it's correct to shoulder the responsibility on these young players. And I try to look out after them because in my mind, the proper process is what we're doing with some of these other players. Look at Harry Amos. Many people wanted him to stay and play. I like Harry Amos. I think he could be a good player for Manchester United. But I'm not up in arms that he's on loan. I'm actually quite happy because he just got an assist, another one. He's performing very well. He's playing week in, week out. He's doing it without the pressures of United. He's able to focus on his game and focus on himself and develop himself more. And I think our club and our place is not, unfortunately, it's not a proper place to sort of grow these young players in the way that fans like Sanchi are asking for. I think that if we took 1, 2, or 3 of these sort of younger players and we put them in the team, I think they would drown. I think they would suffer. And listen, we're not a place of positivity, and United fans' patience is really, really thin. And I think people will turn on them. If we play them consistently on a consistent basis and they don't have good games and they don't have good performances, people will write them off. People will start talking negatively about them. And these are kids. They have social media, and I think we will destroy them. So, and I also am in the camp of the way I see it is we still need to build some sort of a solid foundation for these kids to come into, an environment that is good and proper for these kids, a positive environment. And I don't see that. We don't have that. So, and I think that's why Ruben doesn't use the kids for 2 reasons. I think one, he sort of looks at it that way in that aspect, but also because he's gone clearly with the experienced. He needs help now. We've seen many managers do this. We've seen it fail for many managers. And we've seen the experienced players let them down. But we've seen a lot of managers, and it's not even just at United. A lot of managers do this. When they need help, they go to the experienced players, because I think one of the key factors is that with the younger players, you can get a boost. They are hungry. They can go out there and outperform some of these guys that might be a little bit jaded towards the end of their career, not as hungry and not hitting the heights that we expect them to. Absolutely. But I think there's always a level of inconsistency with these younger players. I don't think as sort of a coach, it sort of creates a problem because you can't really rely on them. Now I hear the arguments that, well, you can't really rely on these experienced players, but this is sort of generally how football is at the end of the day. A lot of managers and teams, they go with the experience for their reasons. So, I mean, I think it's a good question. I think it's a good point, because I think there's a lot of discussion in there, Sanchi, but I do think Ruben would like to maybe bring in some of these players, but me knowing his time at Sporting, having a friend that is literally a long time Sporting fan, and I have two other Portuguese friends, my friend told me that this was going to happen. The day we announced that, he was coming, he told me that this was going to happen. He told me he takes a long time to change players, in terms of he will go with players starting in a position, and he will take a long time to switch it out. He said in the beginning of his Sporting career, he did the same thing. He did it for a year or two. It pissed a lot of fans off in terms of certain players continuing to play and him sort of being stubborn in that aspect. We see that at United. We see him doing that currently with Bruno and a couple other players, but specifically Bruno in the midfield. He talked about, and he told me, these kids that the couple kids that we bring in that were starting, like 17-year-old Giovanni Quenda, he didn't do this immediately. This wasn't like, he walked in and did it on day one. This was something that took a couple years for it to happen. But when he gets there, he will sort of do it, and he will make the call. Well, at least he did it at Sporting. So maybe it's different circumstances for United, because it's the Premier League, it's United, it's a bigger club, the competition is way harder. So maybe he's a bit more cautious to do that, or maybe he doesn't feel like he can actually do that. But he has done sort of these things at Sporting as well, kind of what we're seeing at Manchester United as well. So Lauren says, I think we'll most likely sign Gomez in January. Well, I think it is one of the most viable options we got. I think for the midfield, as of what we know right now, reportedly. And thank you to everybody that smashed the like button. You guys have been awesome. We got 11 likes. Thank you. Listen, I think Gomez is a viable one as of right now from the reports we have. Conor Gallagher is one. I think everybody else, like we talked about, Baleba and all those guys, Warren, I don't think they're viable. So if we're going to do a deal, it's probably going to be Gomez or, Conor Gallagher, unless, again, somebody that isn't really on our radar right now pops up. And, as we get closer to January and while we're in January, we'll get a better picture and a better understanding, and maybe we'll get sort of maybe a surprise out of that. But Grace says, I'm surprised though Amorim hasn't defended more in a 4-4-2. People are complaining that we were attacking with too many players behind the ball, with Everton defending in a 4-4-1. And Grace says, back then everybody played in a 4-4-2 and wingers were wide midfielders. Nowadays, wide players are scoring goals inside forwards, and no big team plays 4-4-2 apart from Atletico Madrid. Yeah, and I think, Grace, again, you're bringing up very good, valid points, and I agree with these things, and I think the conversation, honestly, gets really carried away, Grace. I think it does. I think social media doesn't help, of course, but I think it does really. I think to a certain extent, I think it right now. I think, and this is why I like to break it down into simple terms. I think a lot of stuff gets overanalyzed. I think a lot of stuff is like it's too much like in focused in one area. I always believe that football is a simple game, and I like to break it down and start from the basics in the simple terms. And this is why I said, after the Everton match, I get what people were saying about having the extra defender on and this and that, and he could have made the changes way sooner, and maybe he should have, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, again, I still truly believe, you look at what the players were doing out there on the pitch, you look at the touches they were taking, you look at the decision making they were taking, you look at, the build-up play that they were doing and the shots that they were taking, and I still truly believe we could have played probably any formation with any set of players at that point. And I don't think we would have scored, because at the basic level, if we're not making good decisions, if we can't pass the ball, if the crosses are really bad, if the shots are off target and, we're not being clinical and we're not being focused, to me, it's just like, what does the formation matter at that point? It's still 11 people on a pitch kicking a ball. And if we can't do the basic level, what's the point of analyzing if 3-4-3 and he should have made it a 4-4-2 and he should have put on Mainu, in the 30th minute, and he should have put on this guy? I don't think it would have helped, because clearly we were so lost and we were so, all over the place. Lauren says he would say our best years recently were under Mourinho with the powerhouse attacking midfielder. Now, the thing is, though, Lawrence, that I will say to that, I guess in terms of, when you look at it, Mourinho has probably been our best and most successful post-Fergie, manager, because he won the Europa League. He finished second, and some other, Ali finished second as well, but he didn't have any trophies. And Ten Hag won an FA Cup and a Carabao Cup, but obviously your European Cup is greater. But the thing is, when I look at that, my mind and my head and my thinking goes to Mourinho was closer to the team that Sir Alex left us, and we weren't, that period, we were closer than we are now to all the things and all the mistakes that we've made in the past, and we're way further away from that, and we've gotten further away from that. We've gotten further away from that team. And this is why I keep saying that, I truly believe no matter who we have as manager, it's going to take us minimum 4 years to probably actually get to somewhere solid. Because when I just look at it and I'm just we've had 12 years of just sort of mediocrity, inconsistency, bad decisions. And it's just I don't believe there's anybody out there that's going to walk into this football club and fix this club in 1 to 2 years. I think they need probably a minimum of 3 to 4. Now, they have to earn the right to stay here for 3 to 4. I'm not saying give Ruben automatically 3 to 4 regardless and give him free hits. I don't think you can give any manager free hits. I don't think it works like that. They need to show something. But I would like Ruben to get 3 or 4 years if he can earn it, because I'm looking at some of these other managers with clubs that are obviously have less pressure than us, but also have had less mistakes and less, bad decisions over the past few years. And you look at Arteta and he's been there for 6 years, and, they're at the top of the table and they look like they're favorites to win the league this year. You sort of look at Unai, who, he's had past Premier League experience, but he's done well at Villa. And the way I look at Villa hasn't made shit mistakes like us in the past. They have their own problems, but it hasn't been like that. And they have probably a clear path and stuff like that. So I kind of look at some of these managers and I'm if you look at a few of them, the ones that are doing very good consistently, 3-4 years plus, they've been there. And I just feel for us, we're never going to be able to actually get anywhere if we keep chopping and changing the managers, which we have been doing, and especially, you know, sort of with Ten Hag, we didn't, he didn't get he didn't get the full 3 years. Mourinho didn't get the full 3 years. Solskjaer didn't get the full 3 years. It's always, they never reach full 3 years. So basically, it's about every 2 years or 2 seasons we are sacking the manager, and I don't think, at some point we need to do something in terms of we got to kind of try and stick through it, I guess. Now, I'm not saying maybe Amorim is the guy to do it. Maybe he is, just by circumstances, in terms of we've chopped and changed too many managers, and we're gonna have to try, with this guy. But listen, I don't know. All I know is that we can't continue to keep sacking managers every 2 years, because it's leading to inconsistency. It's leading to things not being able to be built out properly. And obviously, now we have sort of a different hierarchy and a different structure, so that should help if they do our job. They do their jobs properly. But yeah. Oh, super chat. I'm sorry. The chat doesn't move for me. I need to get into. Hold on. Let me switch. Let me switch to the better chat so I could actually see what's going on. Super chat from Sanchi. Thank you for the super chat, buddy. Appreciate it. He says, if we lose tomorrow, my stance on Amorim changes. I am Amorim out if we lose tomorrow. Well, listen, my friend. I mean, if you choose to go down that route, you have the freedom to always do that. And, I can't probably even argue it, but I would say this match was always going to be a tough one. It's not favorable. It's not favorable in his corner. But listen, if that's how you feel, man, I mean, it is. You have the right to do it. I have given my stance, and everybody knows where I sit. And I'll say it again. I'm in the boat of I will probably go down with the ship in terms of I will just continue to see what opportunity he can give us. Or give him opportunities and see what he can do with them. And ultimately, if it crashes and the ship burns to the ground, it burns to the ground. But I will say something on this. If that happens, and we need a new manager, or a couple different scenarios. If they get rid of him in the middle of the season, we get a new manager. If it's done at the end of the the season and in the summer, so to speak. I will say that I think that what United should maybe try and do, or Ineos specifically, is kind of what they've done for the squad a bit in terms of signing players like Cunha and Mbeumo, and I think we should be looking for a manager with some sort of Premier League experience, because I think that's going to help massively. You look at our past couple managers, you look at what Lawrence Burry has brung up, and talking about, Mourinho has probably done the best. Well, Mourinho was champion of England and was very experienced. Ali did well in certain circumstances, but ultimately he didn't win anything or anything like that, and ultimately he lost his job. But with Ali, he knows United, so maybe that aspect helps. He knows the Premier League a little bit as a player. He didn't do particularly well as a manager in the Prem, but at the other clubs. But yeah, I think for United, I'm not even going to say specifically what manager, because I won't necessarily really care too much. But I will just say, I think if United end up looking for a new manager or going for a new manager, I think the best thing United can probably do is get a manager with Premier League experience. I think that would massively probably stabilize a lot of things. And it would make it easier, because I still think there's so many things that the club need to improve on, just in general, regardless of the manager, that it would probably make the manager's job a little bit easier. It's not going to be massively easier, but I think it'll make it easier, because as we could see with Ruben, he is inexperienced, like Sanchi has pointed out, and he's inexperienced in terms of just a coach, in general, a manager in general. He's only been a manager for 6 years. He was a player 6 years ago. And his highest level that he's done it in was the Portuguese league. So he's inexperienced in the Prem, and he's inexperienced in general. And they've gone with him clearly because they wanted a longer term project. But I'm just saying, if a change comes or a change is going to happen, I think the best bet, best direction is for United to go and get some sort of a manager with Premier League experience. I think that would massively help, for sure. Axe is here, says hi. How you doing, Axe? Grace says we don't need to bring in youth right now. Fans need the youth. Need to leave the youth alone for now. We have enough players, youngsters in the first team who get hate as it is. If Lacey, etc., come in and play bad, they will get hate, and that's sort of where I stand now. My thing is like, listen, we've seen somebody like Aiden Heaven, right, play, and I think Aiden Heaven is good, and I think a player like Heaven can actually like be involved in the matches, and I think he can play because he's already done it, and I think he's at the level. I think a lot of these other guys, maybe like Shea Lacey, high potential, but I don't believe they're actually necessarily ready for this and the circumstances that we find ourselves in right now. And I don't think I kind of feel like it's throwing them to the wolves a bit in our situation. So I don't really like to. I don't think it's a proper way to do it. So yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Young players must be introduced into a cohesive playing system, says Axe, and in a safe environment. We throw in players during difficult moments and for a few minutes, no ensured consistency. And we've seen sort of examples like that. You know what I mean? We've seen last season, we played Amos, we played Fredrickson. They played good for a match or two. We played them in another match, or we tried to put them on when the team wasn't performing well, or we changed the team, and they suffered right along with the team. And this is my whole thing. Like, I don't feel comfortable. Like, listen, I love the story of United. I love the fact that we, it's sad that I have to say we were known, but our past history, we were specifically known for making these young players and using them and being competitive with them and being one of the clubs that create top talented players from a young age. I love that, and I want the club to get back to being sort of known as the best at doing that. I do, but I just don't think it's good to do what we are now. And we need to sort out our main identity before we actually bring these kids in, because I do think that they will just suffer. They will just suffer. I don't think it's proper, in my opinion. It doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't sit right with me that we sort of have to throw in a couple kids and rely on them and sort of give them the total responsibility to lift this team and this club out of the dirt. And this is why, like, there's always a chance that Ruben's reliance on these experienced players will ultimately be his downfall. And we've seen this happen with Ten Hag, and we've seen this happen with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and we've seen this happen with other managers, and that may actually very well happen. But I would rather have these players, these so-called experienced ones, I'd rather have them fail. I'd rather have them be embarrassed. I'd rather have them, be shunned and lambasted than these young guys. I put the responsibility fully on these guys, on these players that we have right now. These players, some of them have been here for years. Some of them are sort of new, but they're experienced in football anyway. I'd rather have them get the hate. I'd rather have them be the ones that fail, because it's just naturally, for me, I just believe it's their responsibility, and they should be old enough and they should be experienced enough to handle this. And if they can't, I mean, it's a clear problem. And you could argue, they can't handle the pressure and they falter. But, I see it in that manner. Like, if they're doing it, how do you expect some 17-year-old kid who hasn't had any, like, their greatest experience is playing in the under 21s? How do you expect them to sort of survive for the entire season? They could do good for a few matches, sure, but at some point, someplace, they're going to lose form and they're going to struggle massively. And Um, Lawrence says this story that Ruben changed 42 players at Lisbon over his time there, effectively that number. Well, I mean, they did, right? But again, the circumstances at Sporting there is different than United. Number one, they didn't have a lot of money. There was a lot of contracts that were up. They let it go. They let them go. He used the academy. He did over time. But they had to make do with certain, circumstances. Sporting didn't have a lot of money. It's not like that they could have just bought, but like star players and stuff like that. But they did do a lot of transfer activity. But to me, the biggest difference, and it's not about the same. It's not about comparing the Portuguese league to the Premier League. It's not comparing really about Sporting to United, because obviously we all know they're different on massive different scales. But I think the biggest thing is Sporting had room to do that because Sporting did not do what Manchester United did. Sporting did not have a player on £300,000 a week that was at the end of his career, or £350,000 a week. Sporting did not sign players for 80 million that were never worth 80 million and sort of got stuck with, So for us, I think it's a bit harder to sort of do clear outs and really, make big changes. And that doesn't always necessarily work anyway, because you disrupt a lot and it takes a lot to get some sort of cohesiveness in it. And I think, look at Liverpool, for an example. They bought a lot. They changed a lot. They tried to implement a lot in a short period of time, and it's clearly backfiring on them. So, but yeah, I think just with United, we have to do that in cycles. And this is what I'm saying. Like, this is why, I want the manager and the squad to get results and perform, because I want them to get more time so we don't have to change so many things again, because we still have so many things that we need to change to continue to build and improve. And obviously, if we fail now, then we still have to make those changes in the future, and we're going to have to make changes, for the current times being. Grace says, we have so many academy players, fans can't expect all of them to come through. Well, I think the main issue, Grace, is that people are having this sort of argument that we've seen managers here, sort of ignored these young players in how they feel, or in their mind, or in their eyes. They ignore these young players. They rely on these experienced players. These experienced players clearly aren't good enough. They don't get the job done. They've let us down before. And nothing good actually comes out of using these experienced players. And they're sort of tired of it. So I don't know if they necessarily believe that, every single one of them is going to come through. But I do think that they are tired of sort of this experienced usage, and they go, and I think they've sort of rationalized it by that, listen, we're going to lose anyway. We don't perform well anyway. You might as well try and use a couple youngsters, because we can't buy all the players that we need in one go. We can't do 42 players out, at Manchester United, because we have contracts from the past that have made it very hard to move players on, and players have performed very bad here. That makes it hard to move them on. And I think people are like, well, if you tell me we're going to struggle and we're going to lose, then we might as well just try a couple of these young kids, and then maybe, we get a surprise and maybe somebody fills in a slot or a role. But I've laid out my reasons for why I don't think that will actually lead to anything, good. Axe says he did at Sporting, but we're on a different level. Almost everything has gotten worse. He had enough time and money invested in his vision. It's time for him to leave. Well, I know that's how you feel, but listen, again, part of the vision, I mean, it's not totally on him. And this is why I speak in this manner. Like, even at Sporting, he still had a sporting director. He still had a director of football. They had a plan together for the club. And the same is supposed to be true at Manchester United. So he obviously has his vision and his plan and stuff like that. But at the same time, like I've always said, we have Jason Wilcox, we have Vivell, we have Barada, and they obviously have to be making their own, one that is beneficial for the club. but then one also that kind of works with Ruben and that Ruben can work with as well. So regardless, as I've always said, regardless of Ruben as the manager, I mean, listen, I don't know who they would actually go get as the next manager, but clearly, with the players that we have and the changes that we've had, the next manager is going to have to be somebody that can work with clearly the direction and the identity that they're trying to set and go forward with. So, it's not going to be totally different, or at least it shouldn't be. If it is, then I don't know what the hell they're doing, and they don't know what the hell they're doing. But yeah, I mean, he didn't do it alone at Sporting either. It wasn't like, he walked in there and he ran the entire show. They had a clear plan and execution from the director of football that they have at Sporting, the president that they have at Sporting. There were sort of different circumstances. I'm very privy to that. I know how the story went down. I know, what happened. So that time Sporting was on the floor. I mean, their fans literally broke into the dressing room and literally fist fought players. And the president left. That was there when that happened. They had a new one, and he came in, and their president is elected by fans, and he had a plan, and they got in Ruben, and they went in a different way. So obviously our circumstances are quite different, and this is what I'm saying. The level doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter. Just for the base argument of the circumstances for us is quite different. We can't get rid of all the players we need to. Even if we want to, we can't. We struggle. Contracts, nobody wants them. They're on high wages. It's very difficult to do this sort of thing. United's not really in a good financial aspect, so it's not like you can really necessarily afford to cut contracts or anything like that, or be as ruthless as possible. So, it's just a different sort of story here. One that's probably going to take more time to do. If we only sign Baleba in the summer at a heavy price, he will have the world on his shoulders, considering fans have been talking about our midfield for years now, and to only bring one would be crash. Well, you're right about that. I mean, if he's the only one to come in, I mean, he is going to be responsible for basically the entire midfield. And, if he doesn't have help in there, and it's not going particularly well, I mean, people are going to jump on his back. So, you might see teams slip into a 4-4-2 tomorrow with Dorgu and Mason dropping back. I think it will be Xerxes starting, and he'll end up partnering with Mbeumo up front. Well, I'm going to do sort of a predicted lineup in just a few minutes. So, Lawrence. But Axe says, I understand that Liverpool has set an ultimatum for Slot. If it's true, then that's the performance demand we should follow. Well, I don't know about that, but... we're clearly in two different, places, Axe. I will say that. We're clearly in two different places. Liverpool, they literally had, a good team left by them from Klopp. They've been on a better road and direction than us over the past, what will you say, minimum 6 years or so, like that. They just won the Premier League last season. And they just spent a shit ton of money on very high quality players, or people deem them as very high quality players. And they're performing in the way they're performing. Our situation is quite different. And like I said in the beginning of the show, we've been lost for 12 years. We are a shadow of what we used to be. We've been sort of, I kind of picture us like, we've been wandering in the desert, lost for 12 years. So our circumstances are different. Slot is obviously in a position where it is absolutely 100% demanded because of the team's aspects to not be in the position that he's in. And we've clearly, whether you agree with it or not, Ineos has gone in this direction because they went with a young guy because they want to build over the next few years, and they want to, take that time. So 3-4 years. That was always the plan. So it's I don't think we can necessarily compare it to Liverpool. I know there are direct rivals and people would want to do that. And if you choose to do that, you want, but I don't really view it in that way. I view it it's sort of two different things based on circumstances. We're not close to them in that aspect. We're not close to them in terms of projects and where it stands. So But Axe says he's been in charge for over a year, yet we play as 11 footballers on the pitch, not as a team. That is unacceptable. He needs to go, at least be a gentleman, apologize, and leave for free. Well, you know that's not going to happen, and he's not going to apologize. Well, he might apologize, but I mean, he's already apologized, but you know that he's not going to leave. That's not going to happen. If he goes, he'll get sacked. And maybe it'll be a mutual termination, because obviously he'll be like, if you don't think I'm good at the job and you don't have my backing, then, I'll go. But as long as Ineos continues to back him, he's not going to go anywhere. But, yeah, I mean, I'll tell you as much as in terms of he's been here for over a year and we play as 11 footballers on the pitch. I agree that we still haven't found an answer to be sort of consistent as a team. And as we've seen in the last match against Everton, I mean, there was no cohesiveness, and the cohesiveness is very inconsistent. Sometimes we look like we're turning a corner. Sometimes we look like, we actually have a good understanding between the players and, the system and the tactics and the game plan. And then, it just disappears. But I will also say that in terms of, when I look at it, I can say the same thing for Ten Hag. Can you say it for Ollie? I think after a certain period under Ollie, I think the thing was the same. So for me, it's like, once again, like, this has sort of been a problem at Manchester United. I don't think, when you say that we play as 11 footballers on the pitch, I agree 100%, but I don't jot that down to Ruben, because for Ruben, I don't think Ruben created this problem. I think Ruben hasn't found an answer for it. I don't think Ruben has done something in terms of to sort of change that. I think we're still struggling with that, and it's still a big problem. But for me, that's one of those things where I sort of look above the manager, and I look to the club I don't know what the answer is, but they need to be doing something to change that, because it's not like we didn't have that problem before Ruben came in. So it's not a problem created specifically from the manager. So for me, I don't believe that if you change the manager, that will get solved automatically right away. Now, it could happen in terms of you get a new manager and 2 years later down the line, or a year later down the line, with some other changes that the clubs makes in terms of, obviously we're still going to have to do transfer windows. So we're going to be doing signings and stuff, which is a personnel thing. And maybe hiring management and different people in different positions in the hierarchy, scouts, performance analysts, whatever it is. I think those things could have an impact. So, but I think that just goes down to, in terms of making changes and more time, because even if you sack Ruben now and you get another guy in, it's still going to be an issue for him. I don't think that they'll find that. I don't think that they'll solve that in a season. Maybe in 2 to 3 seasons, but that's another 2 to 3 years. So from this point on, I think it's a matter of time. I think it's a matter of processes and the club doing the thing that the club has to be doing properly. Lawrence says, I'd say that players who care will find a way against 10 men Everton, but I guess Delo is subbed on and we drop in quality and no one effective in the box receive. I mean, but, but in what quality did we drop? I mean, we weren't quality at all. I don't think Delo coming on has anything to do with anything. I think the bigger issue is that clearly, I don't know what it was, but we weren't like ready to go at all. The players weren't ready to go at all. And for me, I mean, I know Axe will say it's Ruben's fault, but for me, again, you're a player of Manchester United. I think you should be pretty much ready to go. You're playing at home. You should be ready to go without a fucking manager, in my opinion. For that circumstance, and like that, you should be ready to go without even a manager having to make you ready to go. And this is where I don't really agree with that. Like, these are supposed to be experienced, grown players, and you should be self-ready to go. maybe the manager gives you a bit of a more of a push, a bit of a more of an edge, brings you a little bit higher, but you are a Manchester United player. You are playing at home at Old Trafford. You should be ready to go, regardless of, if we even have a manager or not, even if there's no manager. Because I would be ready to go. I don't need anybody. If I was a player, I don't need anybody to come and give me a pep talk to bring my levels up. I'm going to be ready because I'm representing the kit and the badge. And I want to perform in front of the Old Trafford crowd and get a result and not be a fucking embarrassment, So that's where that's why I always look to the players, because they're the ones playing. I put a large responsibility on them. And I think that they don't bring a lot of the stuff themselves. And it sort of feels like, to me, the dynamic is like they need to be babied. And you can't be babied at Manchester United. This isn't a daycare. We can't hold your hand through everything. We can't, give you participation trophies. We can't tell you, oh, it's okay that you had a bad game, you tried your best. And that's what a participation trophy is. And that's what I kind of feel like these players are sometimes. Where is the onus on them to step up to the plate? I don't see it from them when they do things like that. Like this match against Everton, the way they started, the way they played, forget tactics, forget that he's playing a 5-back with 10 men and, why he didn't make the subs. Why are the players playing scared? Why are the players playing nervous? Why are they not going forward? Why did it take them to go a goal behind for them to actually push and start doing the things? Because when they scored the goal on us, it's not like Ruben all of a sudden started saying things and their mentality changed and he lifted them up or he pushed them up. Obviously he's doing touchline shouts, but they should have been doing that by themselves automatically. And they should have been doing it from the beginning of the match, but they didn't. And, Ruben had pre-match, quote, and he literally said the things that, we needed to do, and then we clearly didn't do it from, the first 3 minutes into the game, up until when they scored. So, Gray says, Liverpool got Endo, McAllister, Gravenberch, and Sosa in one window, and their midfield became better. Baleba alone is not enough, but the club is probably thinking one in, Baleba, one out. Well, I hope they're not, because we clearly need more. I mean, there's been reports, Grace, so, we've seen them that, United may want to get 2, hopefully want to get 2. And we'll see. I think, again, for me, I will say this, and, again, I think sort of the club messed up an opportunity in that we probably should have sold Bruno, so that we could have actually funded it. I kept saying that I believe that Bruno could have been like our Firmino, or our Coutinho. Sorry about that. Or Coutinho. I think it would have made a massive difference. And we could have probably, actually gotten in midfielders in it and used the money spread around in the squad. And, for me, if you're not going to move Bruno back up at the end of the season or whatever, for next season, I mean, we should probably look to sell him again. If another good offer comes in, I think we should use it, because I think we should take one player and sort of use him as a boost or a sacrificial type of lamb, and take the big money and reimburse it into our squad and spread it around so that the entire squad can be more balanced, instead of having, one player that we usually rely on that is the main guy, because we haven't been successful with that. We're never going to be successful with that. We're never going to be successful with relying on and being sort of a one-man team. We need to be a team, and we need more players. And the majority of the players, they need to be like their own individual leader. They need to have their own strengths. They need to be individually consistent, and they need to be playing in the positions that, they're best suited to, which is clearly it's not Bruno's fault that he's playing in centre mid, because he's not picking himself there. But if what I'm saying is, if Ruben and the rest of them say that Cunha and Mbeumo are better 10s than Bruno is a 10, then move Bruno on. So what is the point of having Bruno? Because he's clearly not a good center midfielder. And clearly there's other better center midfielders out there. And clearly there's better center midfield pairings. So I think one of the biggest mistakes they made was not selling Bruno. And this plan of trying to play him in the center mid. And maybe they did that because they changed the front three a lot. It was a decent amount of changes. Ruben still sort of being this young and inexperienced coach. Maybe they didn't want to make too many changes. Bruno's been around for a while. He's been the captain. You sell Bruno, you change the captain. It's another big change. There's always an aspect of it can lead to more, disruption, more inconsistency. So maybe they didn't want to make that move then. But I think as we're seeing, it's not very good. It hasn't worked very well. He can't play there, and that midfield isn't good enough, and it's not a good pairing. So I think they've made a mistake there. I think they tried to say, listen, maybe they would have liked to sell Bruno, but they were like, it's probably not a good idea to, we just changed the whole front three. It's probably also not a good idea to get rid of our captain and also Bruno Fernandes, who has been literally like, the best performing player at this football club over the last like 4 or 5 seasons. And maybe they viewed it as it's too many changes, too big, too soon. And maybe that's why they didn't do it. But we're seeing obviously the repercussions in that he can't play that position well. It's not the position for him. And that midfield is a disaster. So if we want another midfielder and one of Bruno, Ugarte, or Meno has to go, well, I think for me, getting rid of Meno is totally out of the question. Now, some people think it could happen, but I'm saying in terms of it doesn't make it to me. It wouldn't make any sense, and I think it would be a disgrace to do that. And I'll be the first one to jump on top of that if that happens, because I think that's. I think it would be disgusting, and I think it would be a complete and total shame. So, if that happens, I'll be here. I'll be the first one calling it out, because I think I think that would be bullshit to happen. But like I just mentioned, Bruno, and then Ugarte, as well. So, and he might be one, because listen, if you look at it, Omar Barada, and I mentioned this before, but he kind of had this thing where he said, like, you have 2 seasons to perform, and if you don't perform in 2 seasons, we'll look to move you on. And this is Ugarte's, second season, and he's clearly not in favor. And what we see from him in a sub isn't really any game changing. And I guess if you would come to the end of the season, would you say, has Ugarte improved or had a better season than last season? Because it's a second season. If the answer is no, then in my mind, based off of Omar Barada, then he should be looked to be moved on. So, Steph says, decide who we have to remove and then get upgrades in. We still keep too many unwanted players that they've had their chance and failed. And, like, Steph, I totally agree with you. And I think, it's quite... like simple to see. I think anybody can see that. But this is what I was talking about, different circumstances before, when I was saying, our club and our situation. And if you want to try to compare it to Liverpool, or you want to look at, what Ruben did at his time at Sporting and sort of the clear out they did there. The reason why we still keep too many unwanted players is because we literally are unable to do the big amount of changes that we all know we need to do. We just physically can't do it. We can't. And some of the players is like, we're just absolutely stuck with them because of the things we've done in the past. Like Casemiro, even if Ruben wants him, Ruben doesn't have the be all and all and say all. Like, if Ruben wants him to stay, and the rest of the hierarchy is like, nah, it's better for the club if we move him on, and that's their job. Their job is to be like, listen, Rube, we know you like Casemiro and you want to use him, but you know what? He's getting older and he can't do the job, so we're gonna get rid of him and we're gonna get somebody else in. But when Casemiro's on $350,000 a week, and we can't get anybody to buy him, we're not gonna rip up his contract because it's just a huge financial loss. It makes no sense. So we're stuck using him. when you say like we need to, move Luke Shaw on because he's had so many chances and he's not good enough, how do you move him on? Who is interested in buying Luke Shaw? There isn't a single club out there. Maybe now they might because he's staying fit and he's playing, so we might be able to do something later on. But you're talking about Shaw before here. How do you get rid of Luke Shaw? You can't. You literally physically cannot get rid of him. Nobody's going to pay his wages and he's injury prone. We're stuck with him. We have players like this where we are actually stuck with, which is why I'm saying the circumstances and the process has to be different. We can't do it all in one shot. We would like to. If we had, brand new owners with unlimited money, then we could probably do it, but we don't. So, that's not the reality of the situation. So we have to go with what is, available to us and what can happen, unfortunately. X says, I disagree. The manager is the brain and the heartbeat of the team. This team is delirious and unmotivated. The man in management is so bad. Well, I mean, listen, I'll take the point in that if you agree or if you believe that the man in management is bad, that's fine. That's your opinion. And I've seen people say that before. I don't really know where I stand on this man management thing because we don't really see the full aspect and the full picture. So for me, it's hard to give an opinion on to say if it's good, bad man management, good or bad man management. I mean, I don't see how he handles the players behind the scenes. I literally see the guy once a week on the pitch. And he's done things where he's got things right. He's done things where he's got them wrong. So I don't know. But yeah, I think for me, Axe, like that thing that were the managers, the brain, and the heartbeat, I don't feel like that is true in today's time. I kind of view that as sort of the old past. Like, I would say that Sir Alex Ferguson was certainly the brain and the heartbeat. And, it was very important to us, and it was a reason why we were very successful. But I don't really see general football like that anymore. I don't. So I don't actually believe that the manager is actually the brain and the heartbeat across all football in all the top leagues. I just don't view it in that way. So that's where I have my disagreement. I think obviously they still play a large role, they still have impact, and they still make decisions. But I would say, for me, Fergie was that sort of manager that was the brain and the heartbeat. I don't see football managers like that. Even to the extent of like Pep. Like there was many things that Pep at City, without the other people around him and without the circumstances of the club, he wouldn't have been able to do what he did. So he was obviously responsible for things, but Pep didn't. Why didn't Pep develop the first right back that he bought? Why did they go and buy 7 right backs? And they have the ability to go buy 7 right backs. They had the ability to go and buy a player and be like, nah, this player's not going to work. Get him out and get somebody else in. We don't have that ability. So, Grace says, didn't Bruno say he would go to a deeper position later in his career? Well, I mean, listen, he plays there for Portugal, but Portugal play with a 3, which is clearly we don't play with a 3. We play with a 2. So I think it's different there. And I don't know if he said that, Grace. I don't know. I can't tell you if he did or didn't say it. But I mean, naturally, a lot of players do that anyway. You start off as an attacking midfielder. When you get older, the legs start going. You drop back, and you're sort of more of like a deep line playmaker of sorts and stuff like that. I mean, we saw Scholes do it to a certain extent. Scholes used to be, a center attacking mid, a 10. But then later in his career, he dropped to, sort of like an 8. So, I mean, it's a natural progression, but yeah, it doesn't, in what we're doing and how we're doing, it doesn't work right now. It doesn't work right now. So, Lawrence says 3 in the middle. That's my last word. Bruno plays deeper in the midfield 3. I just said that. I didn't even read your comment. Yeah. So, Ruben is just making us suffer. Well, I mean, that's the whole argument again. It's like, that's never his plan and it's not his idea. So he's going to play something and people will say yes so that we can like sort of steady the ship. But I mean, maybe he's too stubborn on that. Maybe he's being too stubborn on it. But also, I've seen the team play with 3 and Bruno. Well, Bruno never played there, yeah? Well, actually, he did, but he played in the front of the 3. I don't know. It didn't really work, in my opinion, either. Like, it still ended in failure. I guess the argument would be, well, it'll be better than this. Sure. But really, the way I look at it is, like, we need the pieces, obviously, and we don't have all the pieces. Like, we need the pieces to be able to do what the manager wants to do with, you know, his system and his team, and we don't have it. Like, clearly, we don't have it. We don't have the midfield pieces. So, Ruben is a gaslighter. He is not the guy. 2 things are true, in my opinion. Players aren't good enough, but neither is Ruben. Just look at the stats and the eye test. Enough excuses, in my opinion. Well, I for sure certainly think that, again, you know, personnel-wise, Andresito, we would have to continue to upgrade, and that's naturally, it's going to happen, and it has to happen, regardless of the manager. Like, again, like, if you're talking about right now, and you sack Ruben, and whoever we get, let's just say they're here for to the next 3 years, they're still going to get another, you know, 6 transfer windows or so. It's still going to be changes in the team. Other players are going to develop, or players are going to get older, players are going to leave, you know. So things will change in due time. It's just about who's going to be here and, you know, what time do you get and stuff like that. And Ruben, in terms of that, like, I will say, like, he's not an elite manager because he's experienced. He's inexperienced. Like, he clearly can't be, you know, an elite manager. He doesn't have the experience for it. But this is where, like, I guess people differ in that people want eliteness, and I don't know if we can get that because I don't know what managers are out there, and people will say go get Nagelsmann and go get this and that. But first of all, they have to want to actually come to us. So, you know, maybe they tried to get a couple of these guys and they weren't willing to take the project. And we ended up with Ruben. You know, maybe he was. I don't think Ruben was necessarily the first choice. But maybe it was what we can get. And maybe the sad fact is that we can't necessarily get an elite manager because of what we are. I mean, Ancelotti literally just said that the other day, and people have said to get Ancelotti. And Ancelotti literally just said that Manchester United job has too much pressure. And you're talking about Carlo the Don Ancelotti, who has managed everywhere and is a top manager and managed Real Madrid. And he's saying the United job has too much pressure. So, you know, but I think it's quite clear, whether you agree with it or not, whether you think it works or not, I think it's quite clear that the Ineos and the club have decided to go for a younger, inexperienced manager for a longer term project. And if you don't like that and you don't agree with that, fair play, but just understand that that's where we are. And that's what's happening. And this is the process that they're trying to go to. Now, if you think it's the wrong process, it's the wrong process. But I don't think, I mean, the fans might have got carried away with the system and the formation and because his team was performing so well in Europe. But I don't think Ineos ever said that Ruben is an elite manager. I think if you look at it in hindsight, he clearly can't be an elite manager because he hasn't won the Champions League, and he's been a manager for 6 years, and the highest level he ever did it was at Sporting, and he performed well in the Champions League with Sporting. That was about the highest level that he could do over there, is perform well in European games with Sporting, and that's pretty much the height of it. So, but people want instant success. They want things to be better. I don't even think that we can even actually do that at this point. Because again, I look at it and I look at United being bad for 12 years, and I don't really see how you get that done in 1 to 2 seasons. I think it automatically has to take 3 to 4 seasons automatically. And when you say forget Liverpool and just look at Emery and Villa Palace coach, I understand the arguments for that, and there are valid points, and I can look at it in that way because I understand, and I can, part of my brain says, well, they've look at what they've done, they've come in and they've managed to do it. But again, the other part of my brain starts saying, well, but also, I mean, Villa and Palace are not, and Brighton are not united. And when I compare the clubs, they have not made the monumental mistakes in terms of transfers and bad squad building, and they don't have the Glazers as their owners as we did. So I think for me, that's when I start compounding all these things on top of each other, and I'm like, I think for you to go into Villa and to get the team to play good in a short period of time is way easier than to do it at United. I think to do it at Palace or even Brighton, I think it's way easier to do it at United. I think United is literally the most difficult place to do it because we've been so bad and we've made so many bad mistakes and it's so high pressure and you don't actually get the time. Like Arsenal were literally like sort of at the bottom of the barrel type of thing. And Arteta came in. And he finished 8th twice. And the third year he turned it up. And even in the second year, there was fans that were like Arteta out. But I don't think it was ever really going to happen because I think they set out with a plan and an idea and they didn't really care. And a lot of people were like, no, like, give him more more time and more opportunity. I think it was really split. So, yeah, I mean, our circumstances, it's just unique and different. So it's a bit unfortunate. That's like that because if we were like I always say, if we were under more normal circumstances, and when I say normal circumstances, I think like if you take the position of this football club now, if we were like in the position we were, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, where we were closer to Sir Alex leaving us, we were clearly in a better position at that time than we are now. I think where we are now, I think the circumstances is totally different. Remember, fans would have wanted Arteta out if he was our manager and finished 8th and then 5th. Most managers don't get 6 years. Are we a project with one manager or get a manager who gets the best out of the current squad? If he can't, then you move him on. You're right. We can't get rid of everyone in one window. Players will just run down their contracts unless they become a problem like Garnacho did, says Grace. Well, on that, Grace, I will say, like I just mentioned, like I remember watching these, Arsenal fans and the clips, and I remember listening to Arsenal fans around that time, and I was obviously making fun of Arsenal fans because they finished 8th and the second season was really bad. And I remember the second season. I remember there was a ton of them that were very Arteta out. And, they would make valid points. And I made fun of Arteta. And I was like, this guy is clearly out of his depth. He clearly can't do it. But I will give credit to the Arsenal hierarchy because they went with that plan and they stuck with it. Like they could have succumbed to the pressure of the fans. That were Arteta out and were very vocal, and they could have sacked him at the end of the second season. They could have went for somebody else, but they didn't, and they stuck with it, and they've been rewarded for it, and that's because they've allowed time for consistency and development under a plan to develop. And I don't think really. I mean, if you look at the circumstances now, obviously Ruben's record is way worse than what Arteta did, but they did ignore the fans. They made a call. Like, they could have succumbed to the pressure under that. They could have panicked and been like, well, we're fucked up. Let's go get somebody else to appease the fans. But they pretty much were like, no, we're not listening to you. We have a plan and we're going to go with it. And it worked out for them. But he had 3 seasons to do it. Ruben, he's got one under his belt so far in terms of 1 year being at the club. So But yeah, 100%. I mean, if Arteta was our manager, same thing. They'd be Arteta out, and probably under that hierarchy, they probably would have sacked him. And he, you have to look at Edu, director of football, and what they did with the players and stuff like that. It is different. He had help. Arteta had help. It's not just all Arteta. You know what I mean? He needed tools. He needed the players. They changed a lot. They had a lot of shit players when he walked in there. A lot of problem players. They actually did what they were supposed to do as a football club and get good players, get them out. And even then, like, they still didn't have the same circumstances. It's not like they had a Casemiro kind of. I mean, they kind of did with like Ozil and Aubameyang, but ours is way worse because we have way more. So Bruno has played in the last 5 games for Portugal in a 4-2-3-1. But is it a 4-2-3-1 or is it like a 4-3-3? I've always said Amorim wasn't the right guy, but it's Ineos' fault. I'm bringing him in. These players don't suit his system, and Amorim isn't tactically diverse enough. It's been a mess. Well, I think, listen, I think that's a fair, assessment. And I can't even say you're wrong. You're not wrong. You know what I mean? And I do agree on some certain sort of level. But I guess from their argument or from their side, from their point of view, or how I see, how they're viewing it necessarily, I mean, they obviously, it's on them because they bring him in. And it just, I don't know, they kind of give me this feeling of they sort of know that, they sort of knew that, they went with it anyway because they keep talking about it's a long-term project. So for them, it's it's not about the first year, it's not about the second year. Obviously, somewhere along the line, we have to see things happen. But I keep thinking, looking at it, I feel like they view it in terms of they sort of expect a mess in the first 1 or 2 seasons. There still needs to be some sort of a level of performance. And things still need to happen, but it seems it kind of feels like to me they're a bit understanding or kind of okay that this is going to happen because they sort of expect it to happen because they expect to, when you make the change with the fact of like you say, Grace, I think they are quite aware that the players we have or had and still have, some of them still have, don't actually suit the system. I think they're okay with that because they're this is the point of hiring him, a young, inexperienced manager, is this isn't a 1 or 2 year thing, even though they gave him the contract for that long. But I think that's an insurance policy. But I think they looked at it sort of it's going to take a bunch of transfer windows to actually change it. I think they actually want to change it. I actually think they want to make that change so that the players that we have actually fit the system, actually can play in this type of football. I think that's what they're doing. So and this is where I guess we're sort of at a crossroads because it's not it's just I have an understanding for that, but some people don't agree with that sort of way of going and they think it's a total mistake. And that it's not right. And if that's the case, fair play. But I just sort of look at it in terms of I can see what the argument they're trying to make. It might be totally wrong in terms of it doesn't work. But I see how they're looking at it in terms of you're right. And it's sort of kind of my argument. You are 100% right. The players don't fit the system. So let's get players that fit the system. But to do that, it takes time. Because like we said, we can't do everything in one shot. So we're going to have to do it in cycles. So it's kind of going to be sort of this long, painful process. And still at the end of the long, painful process, we have no guarantee that it's going to be a success. Whereas other people are this is never going to work. Make the changes now. And, you can do these changes that will sort of level stuff out and make it more balanced now, immediately, and then we'll try to work from there. I honestly, I don't know which one is the better one because I kind of feel to a certain extent, we've seen it both ways at United, and in both ways at United, it's I mean, right now is like the new sort of direction, and it's not going well. But we've kind of seen that in the past, and it hasn't really led to anything sustainable, and it's all failed at the end. So, but that's kind of what I see. Fulham 2, Spuds 0, says Grace. Haha, they're so crap. Well, that's good because I did bet on them. And you know, just on that fact, like, yo, where are all the people that were like saying like, oh, we should have signed Thomas Frank, and oh, look at Thomas Frank that they were saying in the beginning of the season, because they had a little bit of a manager bounce and a honeymoon. I don't think anybody's saying we should bring Thomas Frank to Manchester United now, are they? It's funny how that works, isn't it? If you get results, you are a god and you are the best. If you don't get results, nobody wants you and nobody talks about you. It's quite interesting how that works in football. Yeah, it's quite interesting how if you don't get results, people analyze and criticize your entire ethos as a manager, your system, and your formation. But if you do get results, nobody gives a shit in realistically how you play, or what you're doing, because people just want to win at the end of the day. And this is why it's literally the most basic thing. If you win, nobody cares about 3 backs, 5 backs, or whatever. I mean, some people will care, but the majority literally they won't care anymore. They're not going to bring it up. They're just going to be happy their team's winning, and that's it. And they'll forget about everything else. And that's why my whole point to you, Grace, is, you know, when Chelsea was doing this and nobody complained about it, well, it's because Chelsea was actually in a good spot. They ended up winning the Champions League and they actually did well. So, you know, who's really going to complain about it? A few people out there that actually truly don't like the system and formation. But the rest of it is really just noise because people need an answer to something as to why their team can't do good. And they need to come to a decision on it. And so they just say the easiest one is always the manager and the formation. Because it's just always the easiest explanation. It's always the easiest target to go to. So, Spurs, Lawrence says, Spurs is an object lesson in a club that breeds negative managers, huge fees. Grace says, do you think if we finish in a Conference League place, Ineos will keep him? They might. I think they might. I think they might very well do. I mean, listen, they seem to like him, and they seem to want to continue on this path. And as I sort of just explained, I think they always bring him in with this idea of this isn't going to be a thing. I mean, listen, I think they had maybe some hopes that, like, you know, the first 1 to 2 years or 1 to 2 seasons, I think they all hoped and probably thought that it would be better than probably this. But I don't think they were naive in that, like, there's no way that it's going to go perfect. And if he somehow, you know, like, sort of hit the ground running and, like, excelled us past sort of expectations, they would be over the moon, obviously. But I think they always had sort of this thing that, for sure, and this is why you heard Sir Jim say it last time, because I actually, again, whether you think this is right or wrong, or, you know, it's your belief or not, I think they believe it. And I think this is what they're looking at. Like, you know, when Sir Jim says, like, you know, he would like to give Ruben the full season, and he would, you know, and he said, like, a manager like Ruben needs at least 3 seasons. I think they honestly, truly believe that. I think that is part of their plan. I think that's what they've always been looking at to do. And, you know, for us and fans, we might say Conference League is not good enough. And, you know, I might agree. I don't really necessarily like that as sort of an aspect. But from Ineos' standpoint and what Ineos are going to do, because ultimately, again, I don't think it matters how much the fans really bitch and moan, complain, or protest, because it's literally led to almost no change at United. I think they might look at it and say, listen, he came in. That season was a disaster. We finished in 15th. We lost we lost the Europa League final. We were out of Europe. If he can get whatever that is, 7th or 6th, and it gets us into Conference League and it puts us in Europe, it's not really the Europe we want to be in, but it is Europe. And technically, I mean, semantic wise, if you finish in 7th and you get into Europe, it's better than the season before. So I don't know if they will use that as a measuring stick, to make it as, like, they will say, improvement. But I mean, if you finish 15th one season and you're in a place where you lose a European trophy and then you're not in Europe, and the next season you finish 7, 8 spots higher and you get back into Europe in some sort of form, even though it's not Europa League or Champions League, I mean, they might use it. I could see them using it. So, Axe says also Arteta won nothing. Well, yes, he's won nothing so far, and I totally agree in terms of that. Like, for me, realistically, I mean, this is his last season in terms of, like, if he can't win this season, if he can't win the Prem, or if he can't win the Champions League, I think, like, Arsenal need to seriously consider, like, getting in a different manager, because clearly he can't get over the line. And at some point, you have to change the manager because he's got to go over the line. But what I'm saying is, in terms of using Arteta to build something, because if you look at where they were when he came in, and if you look at what he was in the first 2 seasons, what they were to what they are now, he's clearly had the time, and he's clearly, like, figured out answers and had help, but he's had the time to build them into this. They're clearly a better team than they were when he first walked in. They're clearly a better team 6 years down the line than they were 6 years ago. So they might have not won anything, but I would rather be in their position that they are in now than the position that we are in. So if it takes 4 years and 4 seasons to get into the position they are in, which is actually challenging and actually being competitive and actually being consistent from a season-to-season basis, and if it takes 4 years, then it takes 4 years. And that's what I think is actually it's going to take. I think it probably take 3 to 4 years to actually reach some sort of level of consistency like that. When we get there, then it's a different story. Then it's about a different level. Then it's about, well, we are in a place where we are consistent and we are actually, able to challenge and compete. Then it's a different story of, well, can you get over the line to win things? And, you get the opportunities to win things. And if you can't, then, you got to go and somebody else has got to come in to sort of push you over the line, which I've seen many times happen in many different clubs. But specifically for Arsenal, I mean, I said it last season, and, I was like, this guy still hasn't won anything. He did well to transform you, but now the question for Arsenal is not about that. The question is about, can Arteta get you over the line and win you things? And for me, he's gotten the striker in. He's gotten even more reinforcements in the midfield. And this is the season for me. Like, I think Arteta, if he can't win the Premier League or the Champions League this season, I think I don't think he can actually stay as a manager, because he clearly can't get over the line, and he clearly won't be getting over the line. So you have to go and get somebody that is clearly on a higher echelon than him, that has done it before getting over the line and can actually get you over the line. But it's totally different circuit, but we're nowhere near that. We're in a phase where we have to build. So, should we keep? Nobody criticizes Frank when he goes on a back to a back 5, because he's Tottenham, and it's Thomas Frank, and nobody gives a shit race. I mean, this is what I'm saying. Like, listen, we all know there's biases and stuff like that, and it's just different. It's just different. Last time we was in Europa League was a mess, and it was a failure. If we got UCL or UEL for next season, I really hope it won't be a mess again. Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, we're sort of in a bad cycle of this, in that, like, we used to finish like 4th and be in Champions League, and we used to get out of the group stages and get knocked out in, like, the quarterfinals or something like that. And we've clearly, from that time, and when I say that time, I'm talking about pretty much, I guess, from Ollie to now, we've clearly gone backwards as a football club, and that and that's from Ollie's time. So you're still talking about a good, like, how long ago was that? 5 years ago or so? It's been like 5 years or something like that, or longer. So clearly, you know, we've gone backwards, but that's because it's been over an extended period of time. But, you know, it didn't happen overnight. We continue to make bad decisions and bad buys and bad squad building and stuff like that over the course of 6 periods, 6 years, 6 seasons. And, you know, it's brung us to where we are. So consistency is our downfall. Yeah. But I mean, you're right. Cause consistency everywhere, consistency in buying good players, consistency in, you know, having managers, and consistency in having plans, and seeing out those plans, consistency in the players playing on the pitch, you know, consistency in the entire club has, you know, we the only thing we've been consistent at is being inconsistent. So, um, I think you're spot on, Grace. I think 100% consistency has been our downfall, 100%, because our club has been so inconsistent over the last like 8 years, you know. But I did want to talk about this, and you know, we've gone into actually a nice conversation that I didn't really think we were going to get on to today. So I had some other things that I needed to talk about. You know, but I will get into this. Axe says, bro, Eric, we need to win the UCL ASAP. No excuses. Back to our level now. It's never going to happen, Axe. Sorry, buddy. Never going to happen now. So, you know, again, that's your opinion. You can ask for it, but there's no way you're going to be able to get me to agree with that. There's just no way that I see that happening ever. Not with our circumstances and not with the way it's going. Storgo's social media reactions. What do you mean by that? What's happened? Something has happened? I did not see that. I wanted to talk about the lineup, which is what I wanted to talk about. How long did it take Klopp to win a league title? I don't know the exact amount, but it took him years. Yeah, it took him years. So it usually takes a while. It's, you know, even Pep coming into City. I mean, they already won the league, and he didn't even do it right away. You know what I mean? So, and again, then you have to break down the circumstances of the club. City have unlimited money. Pep is obviously a different type of manager, but City have unlimited money. They have unlimited things that they were able to do. They had more freedom to move. You know, our situation is not like that. So, you know, it's just, it's different circumstances, different processes that needs to be taking place, and it's going to be a different amount of time for sure. You know, now, like I would say, for example, like if people came in and bought Manchester United from, let's just say, you know, somewhere in the Middle East, and they're super filthy, mega rich, you know, the circumstances are going to change like immediately. You know what I mean? Because we'll have more freedom. We'll be able to do so many more things, and so many more things could happen at the football club, and you could you know, move in such different ways. But we don't have that, so we have to live in reality for what we have, and we have to accept reality for what it is. But what I was going to do was I was going to talk about the lineup. So for me, here's this. My face is going to be covered because it's just the way things are, unless I move like this. So this is the predicted lineup, I think, that we could probably see tomorrow's match. And it's something like this in this way. Obviously, Lemon's in the back, and then Euro, DeLint, and Shaw, because I don't think he's going to change that. Probably Mazawari over there, and Bruno Cass, because I don't think that midfield's going anywhere, and then Mbuemo Ahmad and Xerxes. Now, you could say, and maybe one change that he does, but I don't know, is, you know, Mason Mount going in there, and Xerxes not being starting there, and Mbuemo kind of going up top and having Ahmad, Mount, and Mbuemo up there. I think that's one thing, but I kind of feel like I don't know if he necessarily wants to do that, because he does like, you know, sort of a tall, big figure at the striker position, usually. And Crystal Palace sort of have like a strong, tough team. And I don't know. I mean, I think Mbuemo is strong, so, but he's not. I guess Josh is taller than him. So I you know, I think it can go either way in that aspect. And Back seven, says Grace. Yeah, back seven. Um, and I got Delo in there because I don't actually think he actually prefers to play Delo on the left. I think he's sort of like grasping or clutching for straws on the left hand side, because it's like you put Dorgu in there and he performs like how he just did literally against Everton, and it's like, but we need him because he's the fucking left-footed player on the, and we need him to play. And it's like, you play Delo there, and like he's mentioned this, and he's like, Delo is a right-footed player. Like, it doesn't help Delo to play on the left as a right-footed player, but I literally think he's doing it because he's like, Delo has been at this football club longer. He's more experienced to the Prem and Manchester United. Dorgu is clearly struggling, but then when he puts Delo there, it's like, but Delo is not in the best form. And Delo is struggling himself, and it makes it harder for him to actually perform well because, like he's mentioned, he's a right-footed player playing on the left-hand side. So I kind of feel like Ruben looks at the left-hand side and says, what the fuck do I do? Because this guy's struggling. I put this guy, it's not ideal for him, and he's struggling a bit. So it's like, no matter, out of the options that he kind of has and sees or whatever, he's just like, no matter what I pick to do, he's like, if I play one player, it's fucked. If I play the other player, it's fucked. So I kind of think, based off of just last match, I think Dorgu should. Well, I feel like there's probably a good probability that Dorgu can get dropped, and maybe Delo will come in on the left hand side, and Maz will play, on the right hand side. Now the reason why I have this is because I have my own, and this is how I think it'll look something like this for sure. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, well, we'll have Lemons, Euro, De Ligt, Shaw, Casemiro, Bruno for sure, and then Mbeumo somewhere up here for sure. You know what I mean? And then the other ones maybe swapped around. Maybe Dorgu plays again. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe Maz is in there. Ahmad. In the 10, or maybe Ahmad as the wing back, those things, and maybe Xerxes not there, maybe Mount. I feel like there's probably a strong possibility Mount comes in, but this is how I would like to see him do, and I would like to see him do the because this is what I think he's probably going to do. What I would like to see him do, which I know I'm not going to get, but this is what I would like to see him do. This is my lineup. And this is what I would like to see him do. I would like to see him have Lemons, Euro, De Ligt, and Aiden Heaven. I would like to see Ahmad as right wing back. I would like to see Kobe Mainu next to Casemiro. I would like to see Luke Shaw as the left wing back. And I would like to see Mount and Bruno Fernandes as the 10s. And if you have to swap them and put Bruno in this one, but you could just make one play wide and one not, or whatever, or make them play a bit more centrally, and just have both of them play more centrally. You don't need them to do this sort of go out wide that he does when Mbeumo plays there, and have Mbeumo up top as a striker. I would like to see that, and I would like to see what we get out of that, because actually, when I look personally, to me, when I look at this team over that team, I like the feeling of this team way better than I like the feeling of this team. I don't actually necessarily like Ahmad as a 10. I don't think he actually does preferably well there. I think his best is coming on the wing and having loads of space to run into and making runs in behind. When he plays in the 10, I don't think he actually performs as well as he usually does from wingback. So I would like to see him do this. Is this going to happen tomorrow? Most likely not. I mean, he could surprise everybody. The one thing that I would say is that, with Luke Shaw, again, there's no certainty because I don't have the information on Luke Shaw. I don't know. So maybe Luke Shaw actually can't play left wing back. Maybe he would like to put Luke Shaw there, and maybe he just can't because it's too physically demanding and it's too much wear and tear on the fact that he has to run up and down, and it'll cause him more likely to get, more injuries or a serious injury. So maybe that's why he won't do something like this, because he actually it's actually bad to play Luke Shaw there. For a full game, 90 minutes running up and down. I mean, for me, the fact that he's playing left center back and he's been less injured and he's been more available, I think there has to be, a part of the reason at the very least is that he's playing left center back. He doesn't have to do as much running as he would playing left back or left wing back. So, but yeah, I would like to see something like this for sure, because I think with the front three the way it is right now, I mean, with no Cunha and with no Šeško, why not? I think he's very stubborn because he looks at it and he's like, it's probably a temporary thing anyway. And he probably says, what's the point in taking Bruno and playing him there? Because he's still going to want to play Cunha and Mbeumo. And then obviously when Šeško comes back. But I don't actually really agree with that, because you know what? Like, if you have Bruno and Cunha and then Mbeumo plays striker and they're performing, well then, you know what? Šeško could sort of take up a back seat to that, and Mount can take a back seat, or vice versa. If you were to go even further, but it's not going to happen because of the captain. I mean, he's not going to get dropped, but I would go as far as, if Bruno's playing like shit, even if he's playing in the 10 there, well, then you can sub Bruno out. The only thing that kind of sort of happens with this is that in the midfield, we are still short, because we obviously only have then Ugarte. And again, Ugarte, the way I view it, Ugarte is the replacement for Cass. So we don't technically actually have sort of a replacement for Mano there. And you have Mount and Bruno on the pitch. I mean, you can shift one of them back if it's not happening for Mano, or he's not playing well, or, the midfield needs a change or something like that. But it's still like, we're still very short there in that aspect. So that's kind of only the one problem, because I mean, you can take Ugarte, and sub him in. Let's say if Mano's having a bad game or something, but he's nowhere. I don't think he's anywhere close to Kobbie Mainoo and what Kobbie Mainoo could provide for the team in the midfield. So in EAFC terms, it should be a 3-4-3 wide, with Ahmad and Mbeumo being slightly wider, letting Xerxes dropping in, and Ahmad. Well, Ahmad and Mbeumo running behind. Think of Firmino, Mano, Salo type front three. Well, it can play like that, Grace, is the thing. Like, again, see, this, for me, this lineup, the way it is right here, like, this is just paper. Like, this is just paper. This, like, what you're explaining to me, Grace, and you're saying it should be a 3-4-3 wide. Just because it, like, I don't get too fussed about this. Because if it says 3-4-2-1 on paper when I'm watching it, like when they do the lineups on the TV, it's just a thing. Like, it can actually, this can play exactly how you're saying. Like, it can play exactly like a 3-4-3. So I don't get too fussed about this. It's more about how the shape actually takes place and what the players are doing on the pitch. Because on paper it'll just say we line up like this, but if the two players are playing the way you're saying, you're talking about Ahmad and Mbeumo slightly wider, and letting Xerxes drop in, it cannot absolutely 100% play like that. So it and his system like you with this system you can do that. You can do like 10 different things with this system, sort of this lineup, this formation. You can do it 100%. So it's just about him, I guess, taking that call and taking that shot, and if he thinks it would work or if he believes it would work. So it's up to him, really. And then the players on here kind of dictate how it plays. Because, I mean, with this one, like Grace, for example, like what you're saying is for them to go wide. With Ahmad and Mbeumo, I think they definitely, probably certainly go wide. I think if you had this lineup, I don't think you would want Mount and Bruno to go wide. I think you would actually want them to stay central. So obviously it would play different, and obviously it would be different in that aspect. So depending on who we have available, or who we have on the pitch, the shape will be different. It will play different. It's just like literally automatic. Lemon Show, Delit, Yoro, Amad Ugarte, Menu, Delo, Bruno, Imbuemo, Xerxes. Yeah, you could do that too. See, literally, Eric in Amorim out. That lineup looks better and more rational. Well, I would like to see him do it, and I think maybe one day, maybe one day he'll do it. Maybe listen, sometimes he tends to do things that we don't really expect to happen. So maybe he does something to that extent. Like for example, like maybe tomorrow we go for the match and Kobe Mainu is in the midfield and he pushes Bruno up. I don't think it's likely, but he's done things before where we didn't really expect him to do. And anything is kind of possible. And I would still kind of hold into my mind that, like, Mainu did come into that match and I think he did do well. And I think he did sort of bring a level of calmness, into the midfield. Now, if he doesn't do this, he doesn't do it. Like, I won't, it's not that I agree with what he's doing per se, but at the end of the day, it's on him. And if he decides he's not going to even try and attempt this at any point, and it fails, well then, at the end of the day, I really don't give a shit because it's on him. You know what I mean? Like, he fucked it up. He didn't try it, and he didn't do it. Like, I'm not going to lose fucking sleep over it. He's the one that has to deal with the repercussions in a certain sense, and that, he'll lose his job over it. So, he has the opportunity to do it. He can do it if he wants. I'm sure he views the game differently than I'm viewing it. And maybe my way, even if I did my lineup, maybe we don't win. And maybe we don't, doesn't mean that automatically that just because you do that means that we're going to win and get 3 points. I think at the very least, I would, my advice to him would be try it. And if it fails, it fails. Although some people will probably still put the blame on him. But I would almost say, do something so you can shut some people up. Because some people are convinced that until he does something like that, it's all 100% his fault. And it's just like, well, to a certain extent, yes. But at the same time, like, there's no guarantee that my lineup would lead us to a win either. I mean, it could be worse. We could just be just as bad. We could fucking lose. With this lineup. So, but if you do it and you try it and it fails, then at least some people will probably have to kind of keep their mouth closed in terms of they've seen both and it just doesn't work, so they're gonna have to find sort of a different thing to talk about. You know what I mean? He needs to go. Okay, good, but he's not going. So I understand. Talk about, I don't know, something else. I know you believe he wants to go, but like he's not. Like, not right now. So, I don't know. 2-1. Yes, I seen Tottenham. Thank you for keeping us updated, Grace. I forgot to mention it. 2-1. 2-1 right now. Did it end or is it still going? I know that I know that he needs to go. It is 62nd minute of the match. Kudus. See, that's one player like Kudus, clearly, good enough to play in the Prem, went from the same Ajax team, went to West Ham, and it has now gone to Tottenham, and he plays very good. You know what I mean? And that was clearly like, he's one player where like I look at that period in time and I'm like, we monumentally fucked that up so bad. Like, we could have gotten Kudus. Instead, we bought Anthony for fucking 80 million. You know what I mean? Like, we could have had Kudus instead. And clearly Kudus is built way better for the Prem than Anthony ever was. And one is playing in the Prem and one is playing in La Liga. You know what I mean? That's just one small glimpse and an example. Maybe a big difference. Maybe Ten Hag would still be in a job right now. I don't know. It's sort of like a butterfly effect type of thing. I don't know. Maybe he wouldn't have been. Maybe he still would have been sacked. Maybe it would have made no difference. Maybe it would have been worse. But I kind of feel like if he bought Curtis for the amount that he was bought for, and we didn't buy Anthony and spend fucking 80 million on him and destroy ourselves with that, because that's literally, we could have got Curtis for half the price. We could have got another player out of that, so we could have got two instead of one. This guy would have, obviously transitioned better, and has a better build physically to the Premier League and has better attributes to the Premier League than Anthony. Maybe things could be different, but the first team you showed, imagine Shaw out and a midfielder in that team 4-2-3. I mean, you could even go that far to do. Like, you can at some aspect at some point. You can do that. And the one thing that I will sort of put on the manager is that it's all good and fine to say, like, this doesn't matter in terms of, like, what it says on paper because it plays in different ways. But what I will sort of press on him is that, we kind of need to see more of that of an example on the pitch, Ruben. Like, I don't think it necessarily shows through a lot of times in a lot of different aspects that, like, you don't have to necessarily change this number on paper, but, like, I think we need to see it change more on the pitch in terms of, like, the shape needs to change more, because he does make that argument, and I will say, like, I've seen it probably a couple times, a handful of times, but it hasn't been a lot. So when he does say, like, this number doesn't really matter, I get the concept of it, and I get why, and I get what he means, but I will say that, like, he doesn't do it a lot, and he probably has to do it more in certain circumstances, especially if things aren't, if things aren't working, then I think he has to change that shape more. For sure. So, should have bought Neves for 120 million pounds. I mean, yeah, that was another one, right? Like, we could have. Well, see, with Neves, I don't know if he actually wanted to come to us. So, that's always that question mark, because I think we were in for him, but I think he obviously, Luis Campos and PSG, I think were probably always more favorites than United. I don't think we were probably able to actually convince him to come to United. So I don't know if the money, and maybe also our money was kind of a problem, but I kind of feel like, thinking about it now and looking about it when we were there, I think, I clearly, obviously, always wanted João Neves, and I know why, because look at how he's been. But now that I sit here and think about it, I'm like, I don't know if he actually ever wanted to really come. Like, I think we were always second favorite to that, for quite a clear reason. So, should we have gotten him in general? Yeah, but were we ever going to be able to do it? I don't think so. I think Kudus is a player that, like, in that moment in time, if we were like Kudus, yes, and Anthony, no, I think we could have 110% got Kudus instead of getting Anthony, and we didn't. And we got Anthony, and then Kudus later moved to West Ham. So I think, those two situations are different. You know what I mean? Or one wing back higher, Ahmad or Dorgu on the left, and the other deeper. Well, you know what, Grace? You've been very angry at the inverted things, and Ruben doesn't agree with you there, because Ruben did make a statement somewhere along the lines that he said, I believe he said that, we need a player like Ahmad on the left, and he specifically said a right-footed player that plays like Diallo. So, yeah, I've said that in the past before he said it. I've said we need a player like Diallo, and what I mean by like Diallo, I didn't even go as far as to say left-footed or right-footed, because I didn't even I don't know if I had a preference to that, but my whole thing was we just need somebody with the work rate, the mentality, attitude, and the ability of Ahmad that's on the right, on the left, and also probably one that's better at attacking. You know what I mean? So yeah, inverted wingback Snai's got to go. Well, that's what he seems like he's shooting for, but I mean, is Dorgu left-footed or is he right-footed? You know, I think he wants the inverted because he wants the goals to come from them. And if you're inverted, you can shoot and score more. You can't really cross. You can German cross, and if you actually are, good at German crossing, and you can actually put a cross into the box in a proper area and a proper height with proper weight on it, then it can work. But I guess he wants the inverted because he wants them to be able to sort of cut in and shoot, and he would like more goals from the wingbacks, which he did at Sporting, and his wingbacks were good at that. So, what was the point in signing Šeško? Well, I think Šeško is a guy that, again, I don't think Šeško was Ruben's first choice. I think Ruben's first choice, and this is why you have to have this dynamic in sort of the football club, and I think it's a pure prime example of it. I think Ruben's first choice was like Ollie Watkins or maybe even Victor Gyökeres, who are both more experienced players. Ollie Watkins obviously leaning into the Premier League experience, but experience in general as a striker, and I think Ruben wanted one of those two guys, and Šeško was a target of Vivel, and he was liked probably all around. But I think, I don't think Ruben was like, I don't want Šeško, absolutely no, don't get me this guy, I hate him. But I think if you had Ruben's list, I don't think Šeško was number one on the list, and I don't think he was even number two. I think he was probably number three, to a certain extent. So this is the thing of the club, sort of, I guess, unable to get a target or two. And then, when it came down to sort of Ollie Watkins and Šeško, the club and the others clearly made a call, and they were in agreement over Ruben Amorim that it wasn't worth the money for Ollie Watkins because of the price, the age, resellability, etc. And so they went for Šeško. So I think that's what happened there. So, Ruben's got to figure out how to make it work with Šeško, even though he might not be his number one ideal player. And ultimately, if he can't, and this is the point of the hierarchy and Enio's acting like a proper hierarchy and the club acting like a proper club, if he can't figure out how to make these players work with the money that we spent and get them to perform, specifically, like Cunha and Mbeumo and, the signings that we got sort of last season, or last year, more specifically, then ultimately he'll lose his job for it. You know what I mean? And then they'll look to get somebody in that will work or can work with these players. And that can, progress and go forward. So I think that's a big factor into it. He's naturally left-footed, but he can play on the right. Yeah, so I mean, okay, I guess that makes sense because he's sort of two-footed, so I guess he's there. But yeah, I find that interesting because I mean we bought him, and he's clearly like left wing back, can play on the right, but he's not so inverted. So I think when he's talking about somebody like Ahmad, again, I think it's the whole point of he's pretty much talking about somebody like maybe like a Semenyo, in that they are winger first, attacker first, right-footed player, but probably decently good with both to a certain extent, or at least decent with the other weak foot, and somebody that is attack-minded first. I think he would like another attacker in sort of that aspect, attacker first, defensive second. I think that's what he's kind of trying to say. But he did mention the foot, so I can't see offensive wingers on both sides in this formation in the Premier League. I think if they have the work rate for it, Grace, and you can get them to do it, it could work. I can see how it doesn't work, and I see your concerns, obviously, and that makes sense. And I think it's sort of probably a risky one because obviously it's like you're really gambling a lot on getting two attacking guys to like stay locked in defensively and actually do well defensively and actually run up and down the pitch and do that well. But if you can find the players to fit that, and I think Ahmad does fit it, listen, it doesn't mean he's perfect. Like, he has his faults. Like, if they cross to the back post and he's there, he's a bit exposed. He's not the tallest. He's not going to be, that good of a defender as like maybe like Maz or Delo might be. But if you, I think that will only work, Race, is if we actually have the proper midfield. I think if we have the strong proper midfield, you might be able to get away with the two sort of offensive wingers. But until you have that midfield solid, I think with the two offensive wingers, I think we'd probably end up getting cooked. Maybe we score more goals and it plays into our favor. But I think it's more likely we probably get cooked. So, and just real quick, I just want to go through a couple things because there has been some updates. So again, thank you to everybody that's tuned in, and thank you to all of you guys that have been, involved in the show. I was supposed to come on Thanksgiving. I didn't stop by and say hi. I apologize for that. I was gonna write a message, but I figured I'd apologize live. So I'm sorry for that. Anybody that celebrated Thanksgiving, which I don't expect many of you, but I hope you guys had a good Thanksgiving with the fam. And anyway, even if you didn't celebrate Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving to all of you anyway, because it's about giving thanks for what you're grateful for. So I'm grateful for my community members and people that come here. So, but there has been a couple updates that I think we should hit real quick before we get out of here. But it's been a beautiful and very nice discussion today. So, yeah, I really, really thoroughly enjoyed it. But let's just hit a couple things. So Mount has revealed his best position apparently. So I'll get to that in a second. But where is the update that I was literally just reading? Shea Lacey is apparently set to be part of the squad. So 18-year-old Shea Lacey is set to be in the Manchester United squad tomorrow against Crystal Palace again. English international was with the traveling squad earlier today, plus also trained with the first team. Possibility of debut given forward injuries. So he is one, that can be there. He's going to be there again. I think the likelihood of him coming on, and this isn't gonna make people happy that want to see it happen, but I don't think it's quite high. I think Shea is probably literally there to sort of get match experience in terms of going through like the preparations and being with the team and going to an away match and feeling the atmosphere and sort of learning in terms of like watching the match, and then also the second part of that is an emergency backup, because if a player gets injured in the front or something like that and we need to make some changes, he's probably the only one that we're going to be able to sort of put a change in, since we're missing a couple players in the attack and we don't have depth there. So I don't think he has probably a good chance of actually debuting. Now, at some point, if we're losing, and people will get mad for Ruben for doing this, but maybe he says fuck it and throws him in, if we're like 3-0 down, and then Ruben will get pelters because I'll be putting him in a situation where we're away from home and we're losing, and people won't be happy that he plays. So it's just like, if he doesn't play him, people will complain. If he plays him and we're losing, people will complain. So the only way that he can actually play him is, I guess, if the match is close and he puts him in, or we somehow are winning the match and he puts him in. But yes, Shea Lacey will be part of the squad yet again. He was part of the squad last time, so we will see. We also got this update that apparently, according to the Crossy Daily Star, and this is Jeremy Cross, saying that Adam Wharton will snub a move to Manchester United if United fail to secure European qualification. United have made the England and Crystal Palace star one of their main transfer targets next summer. Amorim believes the midfielder's quality on the ball makes him an ideal fit for the team. He wants to build at Old Trafford, and United are confident of landing Wharton next summer in a £70 million deal. Well, we seem very confident in being able to get Wharton, Anderson, Baleba. We seem very, very confident in all of these deals. So, maybe they're setting themselves up for a little bit of failure in terms of that, because we're clearly not going to be able to get all three of them. And I think, for some of these other guys, like, there is going to be interest from clubs like Liverpool or Manchester City, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to have to fend that off. I think right now, because the season is open and they expect to finish in a certain position, they're confident. But I will say that if we don't finish in a European spot, again, we're going to have dire consequences to come out of that, and things that will change, and we will suffer because of that. So, I think it's quite clear that, we have to have the best finish possible to give ourselves the best chance. And this is what I'm saying. Like, there's huge implications into this. So, yeah, it's coming from the. One of the other things is that I don't know if you guys remember, but the young kid that we signed from Colombia, or he's Colombian, youngster Christian Orozco, he's flown to Manchester. He's joining up with our team permanently. And he's arrived at Old Trafford. He just took a picture, posted it outside of Old Trafford. He is in England, and he is, coming into the squad. He's obviously going to be in, the under 18s or under 21s. But Manchester United, I believe that they are securing the new Moises Caicedo in youngster Christian Orozco. He's described him as, I don't know who's he, as a leader of a new generation in Colombia. United see him as a modern pivot who can recover the ball aggressively, provide precise long passes, and who has uncommon emotional maturity for a 17-year-old, which is exactly what we need to be looking for when we're buying players, regardless of age. He is not a hard midfielder like Casemiro, but more in the modern style of the Chelsea star. Well, that's great and all, and I hope that's true, and I hope that works out. My rebuttal to Ineos would be, we need somebody that can do that now. Yeah, like, we need a player like that's plug and play, that we can literally take and drop him right into our squad. This is good in a longer term sense, but this does us no good for the right now. I mean, this, it doesn't help us for our situation right now. It could help us in the future, and if that's true and he progresses well, all good, all happy days. We're doing our thing that we're supposed to be doing. But in terms of helping us now, and we need help now, it doesn't help us. So, hold on. I see the chat. I'm not ignoring you. I'm just trying to hit a couple points here, and I will jump back to the chat. This was the quote. Ruben said, "We should have an Ahmad with a right foot to put on on the other wing." That's what those were literally his words. So yeah. Those were legitimately his words, that he said. Mason Mount, I think, revealed his favorite position. And he said, "Yeah, I think for me, I've always looked at myself as a midfielder ever since I was young," said Mount. "So I always kind of have that midfielder mindset and the outlook of that game. So if I am playing higher up on the pitch and in number 10 role, I will always have the midfielder mindset, even though I may go a little bit higher up on the pitch. So yeah, for me, I always love getting forward in the box. and trying to get on the end of crosses or create opportunities. Whenever we do lose the ball, there is a counter attack on the opposition team. I'm trying to get back and help. Well, this is perfect. This is perfect. Here we go. Take Bruno and get him the fuck out of the midfield and put Mason Mount there. This is his favorite position. His favorite position is where Bruno's been playing this entire season so far. So take Mason Mount, put him there, please, for the love of God. And never play Bruno Fernandes there ever again, please. He is absolutely convinced, and this is the one, I think that's one of his biggest, mistakes that he's making. I think it's quite detrimental. I think everything else you could sort of debate it. I think the Bruno thing is just totally he's totally got it wrong, and he totally needs to change it. But I also do know that he is hard-headed like this, and he won't change it for a while. And, he might not get the time to change it, because if he end up getting sacked. But I do think that with the way it goes, I think eventually he will change it at some point, but it's going to be a pain in the ass. It's like pulling a tooth. Because he was like this. My friend told me he was the exact same way and did the same exact thing he did with players at Sporting. So I don't expect him to be sort of different in that aspect when it comes to that. So yeah. But that's funny that Mason Mount said that. He's basically like, yeah, where Bruno's playing, I actually prefer to play there. So play him there. I would love nothing more. And I'm still under no, I'm still under no illusion that it doesn't mean that we'll necessarily win the match. But I would love nothing more than tomorrow when we go to the lineup and just not see Bruno in that midfield and just put Bruno literally anywhere else and just have somebody else there, like Mount or Kobe. I actually even don't really give a shit. I would love it. And if we win, we win. If we lose, we lose. Because I don't think it necessarily guarantees we automatically win because he makes that change. But then I would just be like, well, at least he's tried something different there. And we can focus on other topics, like how the players literally can't pass the ball 5 yards or they can't make a fucking cross. And they should be able to. Or they should be making better decisions. So anything else that I got going on in here? I thought that there was a couple things, but I don't really see them. So we need DeMarco, Dumfries, or Grimaldo, Ping Pong, Mendes, Hakimi type wingbacks. I can't see offensive wingers of. Oh yeah. If he wants wingers on both sides, a wingback, then sell Leon, Amos, Dorgu, Maz, and Delo. Then, well, but Amos can be sort of an attacking player, no, and even Leon because they're young, and maybe even Dorgu to a certain extent as well. They're not. I don't think they're naturally fitted to that, but I think they're young enough that you can argue that you could develop them into those. Maz most certainly is not, and obviously, Delo is not, but they're already past the age of for you to develop them into their game like that. So I think with the younger guys, they're always there's always a chance that you can develop them into something like that. Now, obviously, if you have somebody that's naturally fitted to that, sure. It's better and probably easier, but I still think that you can do it if they have certain qualities. So dinner with the family is now called Thanksgiving. No, Thanksgiving is one day. Two Americans just make stuff up, picking random days of the year and giving it a name. It's not random. There's a history behind it, Grace. There was a Native American that he actually spoke English. And he sort of he brokered some sort of a peace deal between the Pilgrims and the groups of Native Americans. And when he did that, he they celebrated as a feast, and that's what Thanksgiving is. Pretty much in a nutshell. I mean, there's more details to it, but essentially yes. Jeremy Cross has spoken to Warren, has he? Well, he's spoken to somebody. I guess across to that has sources, maybe his agent. I don't know. Agents do a lot of talking, and so I don't think he's spoken directly to Wharton, but maybe he's spoken to his agent. Um, maybe he has. Maybe he's making shit up. I don't know. Anderson and Wharton might not even want United. Well, that's another thing. But from the reports of that, we seem confident that we could do the deal. It would lead me to believe that from the talks, the initial talks, and the initial feeling, is that they would be interested. At least I hope. Because that's the updates that we're getting. What about Kokoni? Oh, he's talking about Kokoni. It's Caicedo, not Saicedo. It's whatever I decide I want it to be. I don't. Put Mount in the 6 and let's see. Mount centre back. That was the tackle. What about that dude? What dude? The youngster in our team, Kokoni, whatever his name is, Godwill. What about him? What about him? Like, what about him? Listen, the thing about the youngsters, I will tell you this. The thing about the youngsters, I know this for fact because I've read it, so I know how it's operating. The thing about the youngsters is Ruben, and for the people that don't like Ruben, they're gonna say, well, this is why, because it's on him and it's his fault. But Ruben isn't really like focused on like the under 18s, and the way the club is set up right now is like the head of youth development, Wilcox, and others are the ones that are looking after the progress of the youngsters and the development of the youngsters. And I believe Darren Fletcher is part of this as well somewhere. And so basically, there is a group or a team of people at United that are watching and aiding the development of these youngsters. They are the ones that are making recommendations to the manager, which is Ruben, about, potentially which player is developing quite well and might, be useful or might be sort of ready to take the next step. So if there is a player somewhere there that you're asking questions and you're like, why don't we give him an opportunity? My answer to that is because the people that are literally watching him on a daily basis are clearly recommending or are clearly like their assessment is that they are not ready. They are not close to being to that level. So somebody like Shea Lacey is now here because Shea Lacey has been doing a lot of good things. Obviously, the report on Shea Lacey has been like consistent and long enough. And, he's sort of in this area. Like he is 18. He just went to go play for England. He played very well with England under 21s. So he is in that area. If there is a youngster there and you're like, why don't they call this guy up or why don't they? It's because all the other people that are actually in charge of doing this, in my opinion, it's basically like the general consensus is they are not ready. Like they are not ready to take that step yet. They are further behind than some other players. So that's how that is working right now. It's not Ruben is not like watching all of the youngster matches and being like so totally like in depth in that and making 100% shot calls. Like he is relying on the other people at the football club, which is like pretty normal for them to make assessments on these players. And he will take the recommendations. And then like when he feels like, or when he can, he will bring, somebody up and sort of give them maybe an opportunity or a feeling of just like being in and around the squad. So right now, like, Shea is one of them. But yeah, I think his name is Godwill Kokone, I believe. So, but my thing is, Axe, how can you ask me what about him and you don't know his name? Nah, if you, bro, I'm trying to teach you English. But I speak Americanese. I don't speak English. We don't need a midfielder now. We got Mount, Mano, and Bruno Pivot. Oh yeah, that's gonna be great. Mountain Bruno Pivot. We'll win 10-0, Grace. We'll win 10-0. Mountain Bruno Pivot, undefeated. Like, I'm just curious. Like, Axe, you asked me about what about this guy. You don't know his name, and you don't know basically who he is. So, like, why are you asking me what about him? Like, what about him? I mean, what about him? I mean, I don't really. I know of him. Like, I know his name. I watch him. No, I mean, I kind of leave that up to the club. Like, I'm not a youth scout. I don't really watch the youth. I know of the youth players. I don't really watch the games. I'll see clips from here and there, every once in a while. But some of our fans, was supposed to be our CDM. Who's Harley Ebsden James? I haven't seen that name before. Saku Kone. You're talking about Kone? Not Kakoni. Saku Kone. Right? Kone is a midfielder, no? What happened to him? Oh, but this is what I'm saying. Like, what happened to him is that, like, whatever he's doing at the level he's playing at, the recommendation from the club is, like, he's not good enough. He's not at the level. So, like, he's not ready. Like, that's what I think's happening. Now, if you want to go for their heads, then you got to go at those people. You know what I mean? You got to go at Wilcox, Fletcher, whoever else is involved in that. There's like a whole the under 21s manager, under 18s manager. Like, all these people are involved in making sort of these decisions and these calls. They're the ones that are evaluating these players on a consistent basis, and ultimately they are the ones. Even the head of youth development, they would be the ones to sort of make the recommendation and say, this player has been playing exceptionally well at this level. They'll go to Ruben and tell Ruben, like, this player is sort of ready for the next step. Like, maybe you should look to give him like some minutes in the first team or something like that. Call him up to training. Even the process of, like, he's doing quite well at this level. Maybe we recommend, maybe call him up to the first team training, and you get a view for him yourself and see how he does, and then you can assess him yourself. Like, this is how this is working. So, he hasn't been. I don't think he's really been involved in first team training. So, Shea Lacey is there, and there's a reason for that, because it's not even just people at United. Even the England under 21 managers has talked very highly of Shea Lacey. So I think Shea Lacey's been performing. So Shea Lacey is kind of there now. So we'll see. But then, when he's on the bench, or he's part of the matchday squad, then it's up to Ruben. If Ruben's going to play him, Ruben plays him. Then it comes down to Ruben, providing an opportunity and, giving him minutes. So, but in terms of, like, reaching that level, they need to be doing. They need to be doing their thing first. They need to win the eyes of those people. So, listen, we're gonna get out of here. It's been a good show. I think, listen, we'll probably do. It's gonna be an early one for me, because the match is at 7 a.m. here, 7 in the morning. So, I think we're gonna come back with another watch along, because the last one was good, even though we didn't win, but it did well, and it was a bit of fun to do, and so we'll do a live watch along again. I'll probably go live half hour before the match starts, so be out on the lookout for that, and yeah, it'll be good. Thank you to everybody that smashed the like button. I appreciate that very much, and thank you to everybody that subscribed, and come by tomorrow. Stop and say hi during the match, and then obviously, we will do a bit of a recap after the match. So, yeah, be good. Everybody have a good night. Stay safe. See you later, Axe. And anybody else that's watching, be good. And yeah, just come stop by, say hi tomorrow. Smash a like on the video while we're live. You know, throw in a couple comments in there and support the channel. And yeah, until then, be good, and we'll see each other tomorrow.